I downloaded Snapchat again a while ago. I usually take breaks from it because social media can affect my mental health, but I thought everyone else has it, so maybe it's a good way to stay in contact with my friends. I started snapping people back and noticed that since I last used it, they added a new feature where you could quick add people. I thought it was pretty cool, and maybe I'd make some new friends. Not long after, I started getting added by a few people. I didn't think much of it and gave it a blind eye, but I chatted here and there. Then, out of nowhere, about 2 days later, I was added to a group chat. At first, I didn't think much of it. It seemed like a normal group chat of about 10 to 15 people talking about random stuff. Mostly it was guys, and they talked about typical things that guys talk about, like cars and sports, although there were a few women in the group. I barely participated and rarely said anything. A few more days passed, and still nothing weird had happened, which is funny because usually by now I'd be getting unsolicited messages. Then someone added me. His name was Josh, and he was from the group chat. He started messaging me personally, but never mentioned anything about the group or anybody in it. It seemed like he was trying to get to know me. We talked a lot, sometimes all night, and even FaceTimed a few times. He'd ask me things like what I liked to do and what my favorite food was. It was nice, and I was happy to make a normal friend. But then he started asking weird, personal questions. It felt like he was fishing for something, but I couldn't figure out what. One night, he asked me something strange. I can't even remember exactly what, but it was enough to make me uneasy and wonder if something was off about him. Then it happened. Everyone got kicked out of the group chat except for me and 6 other guys. It was unsettling, but I tried not to think about it too much and I brushed it off. This time, the group was a lot more talkative, not just to each other, but specifically to me. They acted like we'd been best friends for years. I played along but remained skeptical about Josh. Soon enough, we all got close, and they started suggesting hanging out as a group. They wanted to play pickleball around 8 p.m. I was confused. Why so late? But they explained it was because everybody worked late, so I agreed. I mentioned it to some of my friends, and they said that it sounded sketchy, but nothing bad had ever happened to me before, so I didn't think much of it. That night, I grabbed my pickleball gear and headed to the meeting spot. When I arrived, the parking lot was empty. I assumed they weren't there yet, so I waited. Eventually, I saw cars pulling in, 6 of them. At first, I was relieved, thinking I was overreacting, but then I noticed something strange. The cars all parked on the opposite side of the lot, far from mine. Josh and the others got out, along with a woman who I didn't recognize. She had her pickleball gear with her and walked over to them. They all gathered around her as if talking, but then suddenly they grabbed her. In the blink of an eye, they shoved her into one of the cars. I couldn't believe it. This wasn't normal. I fumbled for my phone, panicking, and checked the group chat. Josh had just sent me a message. "Where are you? We've been waiting for you. It's about to open." They wanted me to show up. I froze and realized that could have been me. My mind raced as Josh sent another message. "Why aren't you responding? Is something wrong?" I looked up, and the group was still in their cars. The woman's car was off, and someone else then got into it and drove it away, probably to hide the evidence. That's when I realized what had just happened. That girl had been kidnapped. It hit me hard. With Snapchat's new update, random group invites had become a tool for traffickers. I didn't know what to do, so I did the only thing that felt safe. I stayed in my car and I drove away. As I did so, I called the police and reported everything, giving descriptions of the car and the guys the best I could. I don't know if they saw me leave, but I immediately blocked Josh and left the group chat. To this day, I still get random friend requests on Snapchat, but I'll never add someone I don't know again. So, me and my friends used to have this group chat that was mostly for sending stupid memes. Occasionally, we'd talk about hanging out, but it was always the same thing. People would say, "Yeah, for sure," and then never actually hang out. The group was me, Emily, David, and Ryan. Ryan was your typical guy, always getting into weird situations and trouble. He was constantly meeting sketchy people on eBay or Craigslist, trying to make a quick buck off random stuff he had lying around. One day, Ryan was selling his four-wheeler and asked us to come with him because he didn't trust the buyer. We told him, if you don't trust him, why sell it to him in the first place? But Ryan didn't get what we were trying to say. He barely even acknowledged that it was a red flag. We were all confused as to why he wasn't seeing what seemed obvious to us. We told him to just leave it and wait until he could find a more trustworthy buyer, but he didn't listen. He told us the deal was on the south side of the city, which was the sketchiest area imaginable. That side of town was notorious for crime and kidnappings. That was the biggest red flag of all. None of us wanted to go, but Ryan wouldn't listen. Throughout the day, he was snapping us updates about getting his stuff ready and making progress on the sale. I messaged one of the other friends in the group chat privately and told them, I don't think we should let him go over there. They replied, why not? He's a grown man. If he gets into trouble, that's on him. We warned him. I thought that was a pretty stupid reason to abandon a friend who might get himself into serious trouble. No one else was listening to me though, and they insisted I was overreacting. They said if Ryan needed to learn a lesson, then so be it. Hours went by, and Ryan was at the person's house. We kept checking up on him because, like I said, the whole thing felt wrong. He kept snapping us back, reassuring us that everything was fine and that we were overreacting. But still, we couldn't relax until we knew he was safe. Then he sent a snap of himself in a basement. We all thought, why are you in their basement? Someone even commented, what are you doing down there? But he didn't respond, which was really odd. I figured maybe he was busy talking to the buyer and just wanted to update us. But then he snapped another picture from a different room in the basement. It was getting weirder and weirder each snap. Still, we ignored it because we figured if he was snapping us, he must be okay. The next snap was in a dark room showing someone's feet, but they weren't Ryan's feet. That's when we realized someone else had taken Ryan's phone and had been snapping us the whole time, pretending everything was fine. We started panicking. We tried to check his location, but the person who had his phone turned it off. We knew something was seriously wrong and that we needed to act fast, but we didn't know what to do. We tried calling his phone, but it went straight to voicemail. We thought about contacting his family, but none of us knew them. We were stuck. Someone suggested driving to the area to try to find his car, but we knew that could take hours and maybe even days, and it wasn't a guaranteed plan because we didn't even know the location. The next snap came in and I nearly lost it. It was a photo of fresh blood on the floor, wet, bright red, and horrifying. We all froze. That's when we realized we weren't just overreacting. Something terrible had happened. We immediately FaceTimed each other and tried calling the police from someone else's phone. But without any concrete evidence or location, we couldn't do much. We were completely out of luck. We all went to bed that night, frantic and unable to sleep. Days and weeks passed, and we didn't hear a thing from Ryan. Then, about 6 months later, we saw his face on the news. He'd been reported missing. I thought to myself, if we had just gone with him or stopped him, maybe we could have done something. After months of searching, the police gave up. Then, out of nowhere, someone found Ryan walking down the highway in nothing but his underwear and shoes. He looked starved, barely alive. When we finally got the full story in the group chat, we couldn't believe what had happened. To be honest, I can't even talk about it. It's too gruesome and traumatizing. I'm just glad that Ryan is alive. The story I'm about to tell you isn't like the other stories you might hear about someone getting stalked or followed. Unfortunately, I was the stalker, and I was the one following somebody. I'm not proud of who I was in the past, but I can't change it, so I just accept it and tell my story. Maybe there are others out there who will stop being like who I was. So this happened about 6 years ago, so it's not who I am anymore, but I used to stalk people whenever I got the chance. I had a particular interest in certain individuals, but I could never really find the right person to engage in with any type of stalking way. That was until one day I decided to download Snapchat. I heard it was a good way to make friends, so I added all the close people I knew. They never knew what I was up to when I was home alone. Nobody did, and that's what I liked. I like to stalk people. There's a mentality that goes into being someone who likes to stalk people. As I said, I downloaded Snapchat and started adding my friends. One of them was named Emily. I had no interest in Emily, and I was fine with that. I really liked our friendship. But I think that I typed a few numbers wrong and I ended up adding a random Emily instead. I didn't notice until that night when I got a snap from her, and it looked nothing like Emily's house or anything familiar. I thought about deleting her, but after a few conversations, she sent a snap of her face, and it was perfect. Her hair, the way she looked, everything I ever fantasized about. This was at the peak of my stalking phase. I immediately started asking her questions like I was genuinely interested in being her friend. But honestly, I just wanted information so I could scour the internet. She told me her last name and the city she lived in, and that was all I needed to find everything. Her parents, the inside of her house through Zillow. I also knew her dog, her schedule, everything about her. I probably knew more about her than her parents did. At this point, I knew what college she went to, and most importantly, where she lived. That fueled me as the stalker I was. I played it cool. She had no idea I was so obsessed with her. We talked, and to my surprise, she only lived about 30 minutes away. What are the odds, I thought, but honestly, in my mindset back then, I felt like it was meant to be. We kept talking, and I asked to meet up with her for some snacks, something harmless so she wouldn't figure out my true intentions. She agreed. When the day came, I got all dressed up in my nicest clothes and looked as handsome as I could. We went out for ice cream. It was casual, but I didn't want to let the chance of something deeper slip away, so I pursued her with interest. She seemed to really like me. Honestly, after the first time we went out, we texted each other all night, literally until 2 a.m. It was that cheesy love type stuff. Things were going so well that the lines started to blur between my obsession and actual love. But I had just met her, so I knew something wasn't right. From her perspective, I was just a really nice guy interested in her. But from mine, I had a different agenda. Even when I told myself I didn't, I'd get in my car, drive 30 minutes out, stop at a gas station to get snacks, and park down her road. I parked where I could barely see her house, but just enough to see her room, which was on the back side of her house. I never got caught. I saw her talking to her friends and hanging out with them. I never saw anything inappropriate like her getting dressed. I thought that was too far, and I respected that boundary. But my obsession grew stronger and stronger. Stalking turned into an unbearable urge to act. I started going insane. I checked her social media constantly, analyzed her posts, and tried to decipher her tweets. That's when jealousy hit me. Hard. One night, she tweeted a cryptic message about somebody making her feel a certain way. I knew it wasn't me because we had only met once. The anger consumed me. I did what no normal person would do. I figured out a way to get her passwords. I asked her a ton of questions, and I slipped in a password-related question as a joke. Eventually, I got her password. I made sure to only sign in when I was near her house, so it wouldn't seem suspicious. You'd be surprised how easy it is to get someone's Wi-Fi password. Once I was in, I read through all her DMs and messages, just to make sure there wasn't anyone else. And boy, was I wrong. There was this guy named Brad, and he was everything I wasn't. I couldn't let that happen. I hopped on her messages and threatened him, pretending to be her. I said things like, "If you ever talk to me again, I'll call the police. Don't ever speak to me again. I hate you." I deleted the messages and blocked him. Honestly, I don't think she ever noticed, because she ended up messaging one of her best friends saying, "I think Brad blocked me." I was in the clear. At this point, I felt like I should have backed away from stalking. It was no longer harmless or fun. It was dangerous, for me and for her. But I didn't stop. We hung out again, staying up super late and getting breakfast together. Everything seemed fine. She smiled at me, and I knew I was in too deep. We went home and texted again, this time calling until 3 a.m. and falling asleep on FaceTime. It felt amazing, innocent even, but I couldn't let innocence be a part of me because I wasn't innocent. One night, I reached my breaking point. I wanted to break into her house just to see her. I couldn't stay away another second. I knew everything, when her parents weren't home, when they worked, and their schedules. At 4 a.m. on Tuesday, I made my move. I got in my car, drove to her house, put on a ski mask, and approached her home. I don't know what it was, guilt, a second thought, or a small part of me that still had decency, but I couldn't do it. I touched the window, found it open, and could have slid right in. But instead, I closed it, made it look like it was never open, and then went back to my car. I took off my mask and gloves, blocked her number, and drove home. I couldn't sleep that night. I just stared at the ceiling. Maybe it's because I had lost myself. Maybe it's because I became the monster I swore I'd never be. To this day, she has no idea how close I was, and I'm happy she doesn't. I hope she's living a happy life with people who truly love her. As for me, I've changed, and I don't do anything like that anymore. I'm not proud of who I was, but it's part of my past. I feel like some people might relate to this, because we've all heard of someone taking a Snapchat and noticing something they shouldn't have seen. One night, I was sitting at home. It was late, and I was completely alone. I lived in a very rural area, far from any neighbors or buildings, in a small town in Minnesota. I won't name the town, but there was no one around for miles. My house was pretty big because my parents were farmers, but they did really well for themselves. I'd say they were millionaires, so we had one of those rich farmhouses. It was white with columns everywhere, and the living room was the size of 2 kitchens. I'm just trying to paint the picture for you. That night, I was sitting on the couch, watching a movie, Snapchatting my girlfriend and some friends. I was eating, relaxing, and the whole night had been completely quiet. No strange sounds, no mysterious figures outside the window. I wasn't worried at all. I'd never had any incidents, not even with coyotes. I felt safe. Like I said, I'm being overly detailed to set the scene. My Snapchat was open, and I figured it was a good time to send a picture to my girlfriend because I just gotten out of the shower and I felt like I looked good. My couch faced away from the floor-to-ceiling windows, which I'd left open. Why? I don't know. There'd never been an incident, so I didn't think much of it. I snapped a picture and sent it to my girlfriend. A few minutes later, I noticed her name pop up in the chat. She said, "Kyle, I think someone's behind you. Do you have someone over?" She sounded frantic. I responded, "No, what are you talking about?" and I turned around. I saw nothing. Just to make sure, I took another picture, this time framing the window more clearly, and sent it. She saved the snap and replied, "Kyle, do you not see it?" So I looked closer, and my heart sank. There was a man, a full-grown man, about 6'5", standing outside my window, staring at me. I froze. I didn't know what to do. Should I text her back? Should I run? Should I pretend nothing happened? I didn't want to panic her, so I played it cool and said, "Let me double check," but inside, I was scared out of my mind. I was alone with no service in most parts of the house. I thought, what should I do? What would John Wick do? Before I could decide, I heard glass shatter from upstairs. The smash echoed through the house, coming from the top floor. We had 4 floors: basement, main floor, upstairs, and attic. I panicked and remembered reading somewhere that if someone breaks into your house, you should turn off all the lights because you know the house better than they do. I ran to the light switch, and luckily our house had a smart system, so with one button I turned off all the lights and locked all the doors. But it didn't matter. He'd already smashed a window to get in. I grabbed the closest thing I could find, a golf club. I wasn't about to let some intruder take over my house. I was in fight mode. I moved to the second floor, thinking he wouldn't realize I was no longer on the main floor. I could hear his footsteps above me, slow and deliberate, like a movie. I didn't know if he had a weapon, but I gripped the golf club tighter. As I listened, I heard him coming down the stairs. I hid behind a wall, holding the club like a kid playing hide-and-seek. The tension was unbearable. When he stepped off the last stair, I swung as hard as I could, hitting him in the knee. He tumbled down the stairs and scrambled to his feet, running. I chased him, yelling, "Get back here," as if that would stop him. In my panic, I tripped and fell down the stairs, dropping the club. By the time I got up, he was gone, hiding somewhere else in the house. Now I was unarmed, searching for an intruder. I felt completely vulnerable. I ran upstairs to my parents' room, looking for a weapon. I found a gun taped under my dad's bed. I couldn't believe it. What kind of a person tapes a gun there? But I was desperate. I grabbed the gun and shouted, "Come out or I'll shoot." He yelled back, "Do it, I dare you." I couldn't pinpoint his location, but it sounded like he was in the far left corner of the basement. Without thinking, I ran down there and started firing. 6 shots echoed through the house, deafening me. My ears were ringing so badly I dropped the gun. The man bolted past me, jumping over my arms as I tried to grab him. Disoriented, I could barely hear or react. He ran to the front door, but it was locked, and he couldn't figure out the system. Panicking, he ran to the 4th floor and smashed another window before jumping out and disappearing into the woods. For the first time, I saw his face clearly. I immediately called my parents and told them everything. My girlfriend had been blowing up my phone asking if I was okay. My parents got home a few days later. I showed them the damage and told them everything. I yelled at my dad for leaving a gun where anyone could find it, but he said it might have saved my life. Long story short, the cops came and found no evidence of the man. With no neighbors nearby, there were no witnesses. I still don't know what his intentions were, but I'm grateful my girlfriend noticed something in that Snapchat. Without her, I don't know what would have happened. This happened about 5 years ago. I was 16 at the time, and like most high school kids, I was on Snapchat almost 24/7. It was the way that I communicated with all my friends, and I had like 20 different streaks with people. I still use Snapchat today, in fact, but not quite to the same level. Anyways, one night, I was in my bedroom just watching TV and snapping friends. I lived with my parents at this time, as well as my older sister. I remember that I was on the app and I saw someone new added me. It was a girl named Sophie, so without even looking at her profile or anything, I added her back. I didn't recognize her name, but I thought that maybe she went to my school or we had mutual friends. I didn't know why else somebody would add me. Also, without giving it much thought, I sent her a selfie without any words. I wanted to see who she was. She responded back within a minute, except it was not a picture of her face. She was outside and it was nighttime, so I couldn't see much. It looked like she was in somebody's backyard and there was a house. After like 5 seconds of looking at it though, I realized it. This was my house. I was so confused. The picture did not have her in it at all. It was just a picture of my house. I got up and went over to my bedroom window, which did look out to the backyard. However, we did not have good lighting back there. The backyard light was off, and there were numerous trees in the yard. I couldn't see anything. I kept looking though. Then I snapped the girl back, but instead of a photo, I sent a message. I asked who she was and why she was in my yard. Then, as I was still looking into the backyard, I saw a flash of light quickly come out from behind a tree. Then it went away. I barely saw a person sort of behind it, but I didn't get a good look at them at all. Then I got the snap of the picture that I had just seen being taken. It was a flash photo this time of the back of my house again with no words. I was so confused. I continued to look out the window. Then I saw what appeared to be a man run out from behind the tree and then hop the fence into the neighbor's yard. I couldn't see very well at all. It was literally just enough to distinguish that it was probably a guy, partly from the looks and partly from movement. I couldn't tell how old this person was or anything. It happened so fast. I was really freaked out, but told myself that maybe it was a prank by one of my friends. After that, I went around the house and covered every window and double-checked all the locks. Then I went back to my room. When I got there, I saw that I had a voice recording sent to me on Snapchat by the same user. I say user because at this point, I was sure that it wasn't the girl it appeared to be on Snapchat. I played the recording. It was the sound of a man laughing, and he seemed older than high school age. I was so creeped out. I started snapping all my friends, telling them about it. None of them seemed to have any idea who it was, as if it might have been a prank or something. After that, I blocked the user. For a few weeks, I felt paranoid, wondering if somebody else would add me, or if someone would show up in my backyard, but nobody did. I still wonder who did that and why. This is something that happened about 4 years ago. It all started when I got added by this random guy on Snapchat. I think his name was John something. I don't remember exactly. But I didn't immediately recognize his name or anything. Still, I added him back and didn't think too much of it. During this time, I was in college working on my master's degree. With the 5+ years that I had spent in college and the various jobs that I worked, I figured he maybe knew me from somewhere. I also had quite a few friends on the Snapchat app. So anyways, a few days went by after this. One day I was at home in my apartment, and for some reason I looked onto the Snap map. This map shows you and all of your friends' locations if they have it turned on. Well, I noticed that there was a guy on the Snap map, seemingly in my apartment complex. It was the guy who had recently added me. I figured that maybe he lived there as well. He did not have his last name on his Snapchat, so I didn't know who he was or how to find out. After that, the next day, I happened to be on the other side of town with a couple of friends. We were at a park working out, and it was kind of a popular area. There were quite a few other people there, and shortly before leaving, I looked on my phone, and I looked at the Snap map again. I remember that my friends and I were seeing where another one of our friends was. Well, I noticed that the same guy was at the park. He did not appear to be right next to me, but was pretty close. I looked around, and I didn't know what he even looked like, but I also didn't notice anything strange. Within my sight, there were probably at least 20 different people. Maybe this was just a coincidence, but it seemed kind of odd to me. Things got even stranger though. I started to get curious, and when I got home, I looked on my Snap map again. Once more, the guy was seemingly right outside of my apartment a short time after I got home. The next day, I went to the grocery store, which was just a couple of miles away from my place. When I was there, I randomly had the thought to look on the map. I thought, there's no way this guy's gonna be here as well. But when I looked, he was there, and according to the map, was in the parking lot. Now, the locations on Snapchat only update when you're on the app, and they're also not always 100% accurate with location, but they're usually pretty close. I looked around the store for the rest of the time that I was there. I honestly couldn't tell where the guy was though. I didn't even know what he looked like. But this was very suspicious, and I started to wonder if he even lived in my apartment complex, or was he possibly stalking me? When I got home that night, I looked on the map almost immediately. The guy appeared on the map seemingly right outside of my place again. Now I decided to ask him some questions. I sent him a chat on Snapchat asking who he was and how he knows me. After sending the chat, I went into my settings and then turned my location off. Then I saw that the guy had opened my message, but had seemingly left me on red. I was very confused, so I just blocked the guy. Several minutes went by. I lived on the first floor of my apartment building. I was in my living room, and then there was suddenly a knock at my window. It was coming from my bedroom. I went inside, and as soon as I did, saw this man standing there looking into my window. I had never seen him before in my life. This was the guy who added me on Snapchat? I moved out of the room, but he continued to knock on my window, and the knocking was seeming to get louder. I decided to call the police. This guy was appearing to stalk me or something, so I told the police what was going on, and they said that they would be there shortly. Meanwhile, the man at the window had mostly stopped knocking by then. I went into my bedroom to look, and I no longer saw him there. After looking out of the window, it seemed as though he had left. But just moments after that, I heard the sound of somebody trying to open the front door to my apartment. It was locked, and that was followed by a knock at the front door. I stayed in my bedroom. After that one knock, though, I didn't hear anything else. Things were quiet until the police got there maybe 5 to 10 minutes later. After that, I spoke to them and gave them every bit of information that I could. Unfortunately, it seemed like the man had left, and since then, I've never heard from him again.
My name is Ethan, and I was 15 in the summer of 2021. I was one of the older kids who attended Camp Lennox in Beckett, Massachusetts. My parents sent me there to get away from the noise of Boston for a while and roast marshmallows in the New England wilderness. Minus the lockdowns from the year before, I had been coming here since 2018, and since I was the oldest attendee that summer, I became a de facto trustee. However, that summer, things will play out a little differently. Something that I would like to make clear is that this story is 100% true and can be verified by a simple Google search. Also, please forgive me if I get a bit carried away with trips down memory lane. After what happened, I have never returned to that place. And being 4 years removed, I can look back and say that I really enjoyed being there, and it's unfortunate that things ended the way they did. But like my father always says, life isn't a fairy tale with happy endings. I remember that it was the night we were doing rope burn, a big tradition at Camp Lennox. The ritual was simple. We had to build a fire high enough to burn through a rope strung between two poles. The team with the fastest blaze won bragging rights and a pizza. I was on the blue team, and our counselor, Jake, was hyping us up. "Let's be legendary tonight," he always used to say. I was teamed up with 2 other campers, Sam and Riley. We set off to gather firewood from the edge of the forest behind the camp. Nothing unusual. We had done this 100 times before on nights when we were just building fires for roasting marshmallows. So we trudged through the trees with our flashlights, looking for dry sticks. For those of you who spend a lot of time outdoors and may have experienced a thing or two in the woods, know that the forest has a way of telling you that something is off. A strange stillness came over the forest. It was very noticeable to me. We were maybe 50 yards in, kicking through the underbrush, when Riley stopped in his tracks and looked back at us. "Ugh, do you guys smell that?" he asked. He was ahead of us, so it wasn't long before I caught a whiff. It was the unmistakable stench of decomposition. Jake, holding his nose, said, "Oh, probably just a dead animal." It was the logical conclusion to come to, so we kept moving. But the knot in my stomach tightened as we moved further in. I just somehow knew that we were going to discover something seriously messed up out here. Soon, my flashlight caught something. There was a figure slumped against a tree, half hidden by ferns from my vantage point. I froze once I realized it was a human. The others didn't seem to notice. "Guys," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. My comrades swung their lights over to where mine was, and that's when we saw the full picture. It was the body of a man, curled up at the base of an oak, his clothes dirty and torn. His skin was grayish, bloated, and melting away. The smell hit us like a tsunami, and Riley gagged, stumbling back. Sam just stared, his flashlight shaking in his hand. Jake cursed under his breath and stepped in front of us, like he could shield us from what we had already seen. "Stay back," Jake said, his voice sharp now. "Don't touch anything." He fumbled for his walkie-talkie and radioed the head counselor. "Come in. This is Jake. We found a body in the woods. Send help, now. You boys head back to camp, and don't say anything about this to the others. We don't want everyone to panic." I led Riley and Sam back to the main camp. We sat at a table in the mess hall, whispering to each other. "Was that real? Was that fucking real?" Sam asked. Riley just stared at his hands, like he had a newfound appreciation for not being a melting corpse. I don't think it truly sank in for me until we got back to camp. Now, we had discovered a dead body in the forest. My mind kept replaying the way the man's head was tilted, like a zombie taking a nap against a tree. The police eventually came and cordoned off the area. The rope burn was obviously canceled that night, and the staff did their best to keep things normal the following day. We played capture the flag and had s'mores by the lake, but it wasn't the same. Sam had broken the silence, and the rest of the campers were whispering in their bunks at night, making up stories about how there was a serial killer in the forest. I didn't join in because I had my own problems to deal with, like how every time I closed my eyes, I would see that body against the tree. Jake checked on us the following night. His usual goofy demeanor was gone. "You guys okay?" he asked. I nodded, even though I wasn't. I don't think any of us were. We'd seen something that we weren't supposed to. Something that didn't fit in with the usual upbeat environment of Camp Linux. We didn't talk much about it after that, not even with each other. When my parents eventually picked me up, I did my best to assure them that I was fine. But looking back, I think I was just depressed, because I would never view Camp Linux in the same light ever again. This place was once a childhood sanctuary in my mind, and was now tainted by the stench of a rotting corpse. The identity of the man in the woods was never publicly disclosed, but the police believed that it was a 35-year-old man who died by suicide. I was 13 in the summer of 1999, living in Oklahoma City. One night, I was at a sleepover at my friend Lila's house. It was our end of summer sleepover, a tradition we had kept since second grade, except this time we were joined by a girl named Emma. Emma's parents were good friends with Lila's parents, and this was my first time meeting her, but we got along fine. Soon, the time came to tell scary stories in our little makeshift tent we had set up in the living room. We made it a game, passing around a flashlight and placing it under our chins while we told our stories. Lila and I recycled the last year's tales, only tweaking certain details from the year before, which we teased each other about. When Emma's turn came, she sat up and asked if it was okay to turn off the flashlight while telling her story. We agreed.
My aunt came over one day and told this story to my mom in our living room. They didn't know I was playing in the upstairs hallway and could hear every word.
Lila and I were instantly intrigued, huddling closer together.
A long time ago, my aunt was a camp counselor for the Girl Scouts. One morning after an outdoor camping trip, she was walking to the showers when she saw a sleeping bag lying on the trail. It was out of place, and she thought that maybe some of the girls were playing a prank. But when she got closer, she saw a young girl inside the sleeping bag. Her face was pale, her eyes open, staring at nothing. As soon as she saw her, my aunt knew that the girl was dead. That's when she saw 2 more sleeping bags nearby, crumpled up like trash. She ran to the nearest one and unzipped it, only to find another girl, curled up and not moving. The third one was the same. 3 little girls found dead in the forest.
My breath caught. Lila's smirk was gone, her eyes wide. Were they murdered? She asked. Emma nodded.
Strangled, bruised up, like they had been beaten. There was a red flashlight on one of the bodies with tape over the lens. Inside their tent was a bloody shoe print and a smeared handprint that was too big to be the girls.
I was legitimately terrified. I pulled my blanket up and squeezed closer to Lila. Your aunt really saw all that? I asked, half hoping Emma would laugh and say the whole thing was made up, but she just shrugged.
She told my mom she still dreams about those girls, seeing their dead faces staring up at her. The camp closed after that, and you want to know something else? They never caught the guy. Some say he's still out there, lurking somewhere in those woods.
Lila tried to laugh it off, but I could tell she was freaked out as well. The stories we told were nowhere close to this level of fucked up. We eventually moved on to talking about boys and music. But Emma's story haunted me. It was so graphic, so detailed for a preteen girl to just make up. I barely slept that night, jumping at every creak in Lila's house, imagining someone was lurking outside. 7 years later, in 2006, I was a college freshman back home for Thanksgiving. Lila and I hadn't seen each other since we graduated high school, so I drove over to her house the day before Thanksgiving. After some small talk and catching up, she dropped a bomb on me. Do you remember that really messed up story Emma told us during that sleepover? Truth be told, I had been thinking about that story ever since I got back into town. Yeah, why? You're not gonna believe this, but it wasn't a made-up story. It actually happened. What? That story always bothered me because it seemed so real. I did some research in my spare time at my school's library. In 1977, 3 Girl Scouts were found dead in their sleeping bags at Camp Scott. Their names were Lori Farmer, Michelle Guzet, and Denise Milner. The counselor who discovered them was Carla Wilhite, Emma's aunt. My stomach dropped. For years, we thought Emma was just a good storyteller trying to impress us that night, but she had been telling the truth. Her aunt was the one who discovered the bodies of those 3 girls in 1977. At the time, there was an escaped convict named Jean Leroy Hart, who was suspected to be the one who committed the murders. He was arrested and faced a criminal trial back in the 70s, but was acquitted by a jury due to lack of evidence. It wouldn't be until 2022 that DNA testing revealed that he was likely the perpetrator, but by then, he had been dead for over 40 years. I was thinking of a good way to end this story, and considering that even the DNA testing was never able to definitively prove that Hart was the monster in the woods that night, and the very real possibility that someone else may have been involved, I can think of no better way to end things than by quoting Emma's own words.
They never caught the guy. Some say he's still out there, lurking somewhere in those woods.
It has been 31 years total since I've worked as a counselor at Camp Valleyway. I've spent 20 of those years trying to forget about what I saw and lying to myself and to others about what I know happened. It came to a point where I succeeded in fooling myself and pushed the experience to a hidden place in my mind. But 20 years after that fateful day on the lake, I would discover the truth. I started working when I was 15, and I spent my summers at Camp Valleyway. The camp was nestled in the foothills of the Appalachians, between 2 mountains with a natural lake in the center. its water stained with a murky southern clay. I worked as a swim instructor and lifeguard. Each week, a new set of campers traveled from across the state to experience the outdoors. I still remember the exact day it happened. It was a Tuesday, the 5th week of camp, the hottest day of that summer, and just before the 4th of July. That week was known as Rich Week to the counselors, since many of the wealthier parents left their children here while they took off for holiday. This would come right after Orphan Week, which was when the Clarkstown Orphanage, the largest in the state, traveled to camp free of charge because the camp was government funded. Every year, the local residents would come by at the end of the week, and children were often adopted. I remember that a girl in my class found a new home with some local farmers, and I remember seeing Ellie wave from the cab of the pickup truck she was riding in as she started her new life with her foster family. In my off time, I would help the other counselors patch up sails under the water sports canopy. Logan, the head counselor, who was about 5 years older than me, was sitting at one of the picnic tables, his small eyes scanning the lake. He kept his hair in a tight buzz cut, revealing a scar around the back of his head, and when he spoke, it was a deep southern drawl.
"Mike, watch what you're doing."
He saw that I had skipped a stitch in the sail.
"I only got 2 eyes, and there's too much going on for me to watch everyone today."
"Got it," I said, and put my head down. Logan kept a tight watch on his crew, but now his focus was on the lake. Ed and Ted, twin counselors with one brain between them, were teaching a beginner swimming course off the shore. Those two always made Logan uneasy, and earned a spot on his mental list of instructors who were likely to screw up next. So when Ed, the smarter of the two, came sprinting up from the lakeside, Logan was ready. Ed opened his mouth, words wheezing in between each breath, with his wet hair plastered over one of his eyes. "We're missing one. One camper. Can't find him in the water. Friends don't know where he is." Without hesitation, Logan's whistle shrieked through the campground, startling campers and counselors alike.
"Everyone out of the water now! All lifeguards report to the dock."
His deep voice caused adrenaline to rush through me as we ran to the water. I was the first to dive in, followed by the other lifeguards. I was in the deeper end of the designated swimming area of the lake, which only went down to around 14 feet, but you could barely see anything. The bottom was a cold and dark abyss. Underwater plants gripped against my calves as I searched the depths. Eventually, I had to return to the surface, and Logan sent us back down again to search after we caught our breath. During my second descent, I was searching by a patch of water weeds when a pale hand brushed against my face. I saw the face next. It was dark, but I could tell that it was a girl with long hair that fanned around her, like she was under static electricity. I gasped, drawing in water. I gripped her torso and began swimming to the surface. She felt swollen, her arms too big, and her temperature was hypothermic. Halfway to the surface, I felt her leg catch on something, and she was pulled back down out of my grip. I turned, watching her open eyes on mine as she descended back into the darkness. My lungs were screaming for air. I had to resurface for oxygen. "I found her! I found her! Come quick!" I shouted, before I dove back down, my hands sweeping through the muddy bottom, but I found nothing but muck, even as the other lifeguards joined. 5 minutes later, Logan's whistle rang out again, calling us back to the dock.
"Listen up. The missing camper has been found in the restroom. Ed and Ted must have let him slip past. Both of them will be spending tonight scrubbing the dock."
He paused, and I felt the other lifeguard's gaze fall on me.
"You're all free to go, except for you, Mike. I want a word."
The others trudged away, looking back at us over their shoulders. Logan focused on me.
"I don't know what the hell that was about, but you could have got someone killed. The next time you try something like this, you're out of here.
But there was someone down there.
I don't believe in ghosts, Mike, and we scoured that water. Now get out of my sight. You're off waterfront.
Word spread around camp about what happened. I could tell many of them detested me, and none believed my side of the story. So I quit the next week and pushed the incident to the back of my mind, though it would resurface in my dreams. That happened in late June of 1994, 20 years later, which was 11 years ago from now. I read a news article that was titled, "Human Remains Found at Camp Valleyway." Due to reservations, the lake was drained, revealing a collection of bones at the deepest region. Several femurs were found attached to anchors with rope. It is estimated that the remains belonged to 19 victims between the ages of 10 and 13 years old. After much investigation, the state police discovered the source of the bodies. 10 years prior to this discovery, the Clarkstown orphanage was shut down for embezzling state funds. Each summer, the children spent a week at the camp and would be adopted by local families. However, after reviewing the records, it was discovered that these adoptions were never official, and they were disposed of in the lake at an area that was too deep for the campers to normally enter, except for one that drifted near the swimming area due to a corroded rope. It is believed that the orphanage appropriated these children long after their death to extort more money from the state. A lot of the people involved in this conspiracy have been incarcerated, but they didn't get everyone. And there are still many unanswered questions.
I've been an avid fisherman for over 6 years now, and I've worked at several different companies as a commercial fisherman, catching snapper, dolphin, whatever is biting and paying, I guess. I was 26 when this happened. I attended grad school in marine biology and had been granted a week off for our spring break. Many graduate programs don't typically offer spring break for students, but I guess I was lucky. During my trip, a buddy and I decided to take a fishing trip off the coast of Hawaii to find the many different species of fish, primarily the ones that were native to the Pacific. We had rented this fishing boat for a few days so we could have a better chance of getting a decent catch. One night during our stay, my friend and I decided to take the boat out at around 1 a.m. to catch a specific type of fish in the area. This fish was semi-nocturnal, and this was the ideal time to catch one. So, him and I are offshore on an average boat with nothing around us but pitch blackness. It's a lot more scary than you think. You had to be there to believe me. One of us is on one side of the boat, while the other is on the opposite, not making a peep, trying to catch this fish. About maybe 20 or so minutes later, we both hear what sounded like humming coming from somewhere around our boat. I asked my friend if he had heard that too, to which he said yes. The humming sounded like it was coming from a person, specifically a woman. I motioned for my friend to turn on the deck light, and to our shock, we found nothing in the water. It made absolutely no sense, as the humming was coming from literally right next to our boat. Seriously, it made me almost piss myself. Every time we heard it from one direction, it would always change to the other direction when we went there. After some time of searching around the boat, the humming stops and my friend yells at me to get over here. I run to the back of the boat, and what I see in the water made my blood run cold. There was a woman who looked to be in her late 20s or early 30s just floating on her back in the water. She did not appear to be alive. However, the odd thing about her was what she was wearing. She wore this dark blue dress that was way too small for her. She wasn't wearing any shoes, but she had on a necklace and a single ring. We both stare at each other in disbelief, thinking if we had just witnessed the aftermath of a murder. My friend and I go inside the boat, attempting to radio the Coast Guard or anyone from shore. We were unable to reach someone, and after a few more attempts, we went back to go check on her, only to find her gone. It had only been 3 minutes since we last saw her, and even after shining the light in the water, she was nowhere in sight. At that point, we decided to end it there, as we were both absolutely creeped the hell out. Back on land, we agreed to not speak a word about what we had seen. Had we told someone, we'd probably be suspected of bringing her on board with us and dumping her body in the ocean. Obviously, we didn't do that, but people aren't going to believe that we just found her. A few days later, my friend had looked up missing people in Hawaii, specifically Maui. After looking through hundreds of people, we never found the woman we saw, and she has yet to be identified. The thing that creeped us out the most was that we were several miles offshore and found this woman in a long dress. It's like putting a puzzle piece where it doesn't fit. It made no sense. If you live in the Maui area, I emphasize you please contact police if you have any information. This encounter keeps me up at night.
I've been meaning to send my story in for a while now. I think every time I sit down to write it, my hands just hover over the keyboard, and I start questioning if it's even worth telling. But then I remember how I felt that night, that gnawing sensation deep in my gut, the way my skin prickled with adrenaline. And I figured, yeah, this does belong here, so I hope you guys enjoy my story. I've been a fan of Booze and Booze for around a year now, always looking forward to those late night uploads where I could turn the lights off, throw on my headphones, and let the stories wrap around me like a blanket. I never thought I'd have one to share, but this isn't just my story. It's something that happened to me and a coworker back when I was fresh out of high school, working late night shift at a home improvement store, a big one. I'm sure you can guess the name. Between the two of us, I think she got the worst of it. Back then, I was taking my first semester of college classes, scraping together tuition money by working at a regional hardware chain. It wasn't anything glamorous, running a register, handling inventory, mopping up whatever messes customers would leave behind, but it was pretty easy work. I liked most of my coworkers and the pay was decent, and most nights were uneventful. Keyword there being most nights. This one in particular was a pretty slow evening. Everyone was watching the clocks and none of them were moving. We were around an hour from closing. The store had that eerie, half-empty atmosphere that only big retail spaces get after dark. The lights above my head buzzed, casting this sick glow over the aisles, and the air smelled like sawdust and metal. The customers left in the building were the usual stragglers, contractors grabbing last-minute supplies, couples arguing over paint samples, that sort of thing. I was finishing up her return at customer service when she walked up to me. Let's call her Hannah. She was one of the newer hires, maybe a year or two older than me, and usually pretty upbeat. But that night she looked kind of different, tight-lipped, stiff-shouldered. Her eyes darted around like she was expecting something to lunge at her out from the shadows. "Hey," she said, low enough that I could only hear her. "Can you, walk with me for a little bit?" I raised an eyebrow. "What's up?" She swallowed and glanced over her shoulder. "I think I'm being followed." That snapped me to attention. She told me about this man, a big guy, older with a greasy baseball cap and a stare that made her skin crawl. He'd approached her in plumbing, asking her for her help to find a part. Nothing weird at first, but then he just didn't leave. Every time she tried to step away, he found another excuse to keep her there, his questions getting more off topic and more personal. Finally, she made up a reason to leave, and when she checked over her shoulder, he was still there watching her. That was 45 minutes ago. He followed her around the store, and eventually she lost him in power tools, then bolted to the nearest coworker for some kind of assistance. She didn't know where he was at now. I didn't ask any more questions. Hannah was obviously freaked out, and if there was even a chance that some creep was lurking about, I wasn't about to let her wander the store alone. Honestly, this was more exciting than anything work-related anyway, so I prefer to run interference than actually close the store. "Come on," I said, grabbing a clipboard from the counter. Let's look busy." We made our way towards the back aisles, checking inventory, scanning shelves, counting items. Occasionally, my eyes kept flicking up, sweeping the store, but I didn't see anybody out of place. Just a couple of customers near checkout. Donnie in a neon vest was restocking lumber, and one of my other friends was just dicking around on the forklift in the bay. "Are you sure he's still even here?" I whispered. Hannah hesitated. "I don't know, I just feel like he is." For some reason, I just didn't like that answer. We kept moving, aisle by aisle, her sticking close to my side. About 20 minutes later, she seemed to relax a little bit. We hadn't seen the guy at all, and she was starting to think that maybe he did indeed leave. This actually proved to be two birds with one stone because we got a lot of that light inventory work done. And then, that's when I saw him. I was standing near the aisle end cap, watching my buddy do these slow, lazy donuts in the forklift out in lumber, shaking my head at his stupidity. Then I turned back to check on Hannah, only to spot him. He was lurking at the mouth of an aisle, half shielded by the end cap display. It was a big man, mid-50s with a broad chest and slumped shoulders, dressed in these dark jeans and a windbreaker. His baseball cap was pulled really low, but I could see the way he was looking at her. I could also see that this guy was jacked beneath that jacket. Even with the extra layer, his arms were 3 times the size of mine. He stared at Hannah, fixed, unblinking. I could tell his whole body was tense, like he was just waiting for the right moment to do something. This is not good. I forced my face into something neutral and walked back to Hannah, who was maybe 30 feet away, scanning a shelf. I walked right by that weirdo, down the aisle, and put myself between her and the guy, watching from the end of the shelving. I kept my voice casual. "Hey, let's head back to customer service." She frowned at me. "What? Why?" I stepped closer, lowering my voice. "Because he's here, end of the aisle, watching you." Her face paled and I nodded at her, encouraging her that this was pretty serious. "Just walk," I murmured. "Now." She turned stiffly and started moving towards the front of the store, as quick as she could without actually running. I turned back to the aisle, ready for anything. To my relief, he wasn't right on top of me like I was expecting him to be. The man just hadn't moved. I stared him down, gripping my clipboard, fighting the urge to let my hands shake. Then I smiled, the way you do when you're trying to let somebody know that you're not afraid of them. "You need any help finding anything, sir?" His stare didn't even waver. I took a slow step toward him. "We're closing soon, just so you know." His mouth then twitched, somewhere between a grimace and a sneer. I could tell he wanted to say something back to me, but then without a word he turned and walked off, disappearing down the aisle. I stood there for a few seconds, forcing my breath to stay even, pulse pounding in my ears. I felt like a damn gunslinger. I was glad to have helped out a coworker. And then I went to go find Hannah. She was back at customer service, gripping the counter, body rigid. A small crowd of assistant managers had gathered around her. "Is he gone?" I hesitated. "I don't know, I hope so." "Jesus," she muttered, pressing her hands over her face. "That guy's been watching me all night." "Yeah, he's super creepy. He didn't even say a word to me." We waited until the store officially closed, watching the last customers leave, making sure that he wasn't among them. I didn't see him again. Maybe he had in fact left. Maybe I spooked him. Either way, I was just relieved when we locked those doors. But that relief did not last long. An hour later, the store was empty except for a few employees. Most of us were already clocked out, trickling off to our cars. I stepped outside, the night air sharp and cold, the parking lot stretching dark and quiet around me. I glanced over and saw this single car parked at the far edge of the lot. All the employees parked on a small side lot, so whoever was out there was not an employee. I knew before I even got close. I walked slowly, trying to not look too obvious, heading toward my own car, but veering just enough to get a good look. A beat-up old sedan idling low, and inside, the same man. His face was barely visible in the dim glow of the dashboard lights, but he was just sitting there, waiting. A deep instinctual alarm flared up in my brain. every nerve firing off at once. Lizard brain, fight or flight. I turned on my heel and made a beeline back to the store. The security office for the strip mall was a few doors down, tucked in between a shuttered electronics store and a laundromat. I knocked on the glass and peered between the blinds. A guy in uniform answered me, maybe late 40s, heavy set, with a bored expression on his face. Something wrong? I jerked my thumb over my shoulder. Yeah, there's a guy parked in the lot. He was inside our store earlier, acting super weird and following my coworker around. Now he's just sitting there. The security guy frowned at me. He's still there now? Yeah, far into the lot, dark sedan. He grunted. All right, stay put. I stood there as he climbed into his marked SUV and rolled out into the lot, cruising slow towards that sedan. He stopped behind it and threw his lights on. I watched from a distance as he stepped out and approached the driver's side. A tense few seconds then passed, and then the guy in the sedan just fired up his engine. He didn't speed off though. He didn't make this big scene. He just pulled out, circled the lot, and then exited onto the road, slowly. As he passed me, he looked directly at me, eyes locked onto mine, dark and bottomless. And I swear to God, I felt something press against my chest, something heavy, like he was willing me to die right there on the sidewalk, like he was memorizing me for later. Almost like he was telling me that he would see me again. I watched his taillights vanish off into the dark. My pulse was still hammering in my ears. I only realized that I'd been holding my breath when the security guy rolled back up beside me and leaned out his window. Yeah, that guy was definitely off, he said, shaking his head. Kept acting like he had some kind of business here, but wouldn't say what. Just kept asking when people left for the night. A chill then coiled up my spine. What'd you tell him? I told him to take a fucking hike, the guard said. And lucky for you, kid, he did. He eyed me for a second. You drive straight home, keep an eye out, and if you see him again, call somebody immediately. I just nodded, trying to swallow that lump in my throat. Good call bringing it to us, he added. That guy wasn't just loitering, he was definitely waiting. I didn't ask what he meant, but I heard he knew. I hurriedly went back to my car, glancing over my shoulder the whole way, half expecting that old sedan to be idling at the end of the lot again, but it was gone. The entire parking lot was now empty. I locked my doors the second I got inside and just sat there gripping the wheel, forcing myself to catch my breath. Then I pulled out, making sure to check every mirror and every side street. I also took the long way home that night, just in case. For the next few days, I was on edge. Every time I would walk to my car at night, after closing, I half expected to see that sedan parked somewhere in the lot again, headlights off, waiting. We started leaving work in pairs, sticking close to other coworkers. I even told my manager about the whole thing, and he had security do extra sweeps of the property every single night. Thankfully, that guy never came back. Poor Hannah was shaken for a while too. She completely switched up her schedule, so she wouldn't be working nights anymore, which I can't really blame her for. Some nights I wondered if that had been the plan all along, if he'd been waiting for her to leave alone, to see if she got in her car by herself. I never ended up telling her what the security guy said. I didn't want to make her any more scared than she already was. I've actually sent a story into Booze and Booze before. Maybe some of you remember it. It was about my coworker Benji and this weird night shift incident that we had together. It's been a while since I last submitted, but I figure, why not? I'll throw another one your way. And this one's even crazier. I used to work in a call center for a nationwide towing company, the kind of place that stayed open 24/7 to dispatch trucks at all hours of the day and night. The job itself was simple: take calls, input service requests, and then send them out to the right drivers. Since I worked overnights, it was usually dead quiet, which meant I had a lot of downtime. My coworker Benji and I would have the same shifts, and we got along pretty well enough to pass those hours. Our office itself was inside this shared business complex. Nothing special, just a bunch of suites crammed together, totally empty at night. The only thing around that had any life after midnight was the 7-Eleven across the street. That place was a godsend during these long shifts. We'd head over to grab some snacks on break, vape in the parking lot before heading back into the desk. With that being said, it also brought in a little riffraff. Those that remember my last story may recall the details. I went out to use the external bathrooms, and while walking back into the office, I got jumped by a homeless dude that was hanging around one of our dumpsters. Lots of homeless flocked to the 7-Eleven at night, like moths to a flame. That night was like really any other. Calls were pretty slow, office was quiet, and then I'd say around 2 a.m., Benji and I decided to take a break. We lock up and cross the lot and started off towards the gas station. As we were walking, a car whipped into the parking lot really fast, jerking to a stop in front of the store. We both noticed it, but didn't think too much of it. Maybe just some drunk guy making a late night beer run or something. Probably needs a box of condoms, Benji said, laughing. We were halfway across the street when we heard the shouting. At first it was muffled and distant, but then a man's voice cut through the night, barking orders loud and aggressively. The car that had screeched into the lot suddenly tore back off onto the road, disappearing down a side street, tires screaming. And then, through the huge glass windows of the 7-Eleven, we saw a man in a ski mask holding a gun. Benji grabbed my arm. Holy shit. I didn't say anything. I just turned and started walking back toward the office, fast. My pulse was slamming as I kept my eyes on the store. The guy inside was moving in every direction, pointing the gun at the cashier. Then, as if in slow motion, I saw him whip his head toward us, and we weren't alone. Another guy, a second one, also in a mask, came running out of the store. He looked around and then locked eyes with us, and then sprinted straight for us. Benji and I didn't say a word, we just ran. This really felt like something straight out of Grand Theft Auto. We didn't need any logic or instruction. This was real danger. Only one move to be made, and that was just to get the fuck out. We turned around and the two guys outside the 7-Eleven locked on, their footfalls coming up behind us. One of them, the one with the gun, yelled something that I couldn't quite make out, but I don't think I really needed to hear it to understand. This was a chase. Benji was a step ahead of me, already in a full sprint across the parking lot, so I pushed my legs harder, pumping my arms and tried to keep up. Our office was close, just a couple of 100 feet away, but that distance had never felt so damn long until then. Behind us, I heard the first guy's shoe slap against the pavement. He was fast, a lot faster than me. The gunman was trailing behind him, and the other guy, the one who'd been barking orders inside, was gaining ground. I half expected to feel him grab my collar at any second. I risked taking a glance back, and it was a big mistake. The bastard was literally right there, 5 feet away, his ski mask riding up just enough for me to see his mouth twisted up into a snarl. "You're mine," he shouted. Benji reached for the door first, skidding to a stop, hands fumbling for the keypad. Come on, come on. I could hear the beeping as he punched in the code. My feet hit the landing of the building and we were almost there. But then something slammed into my back and I went down hard, my chin bouncing off the concrete. My teeth clacked together, pain exploding through my jaw. The weight of the guy was on me in an instant, his hands clawing at my jacket, trying to turn me over. Fuck! I gasped out, twisting and kicking out blindly. My shoe connected with something soft, a stomach, maybe his groin, and the guy let out this grunt, loosening his grip just enough for me to roll free. Benji was screaming my name the whole time. Get the fuck up, dude, get up! I scrambled to my feet, blood in my mouth, world tilting. The guy then lunged again, grabbing at my sleeve, but I ripped free, hurled myself towards the door. Benji had it open just enough for me to squeeze through, and the second I was inside, he threw his weight against it, trying to slam it shut. But the guy outside was not giving up easily. It was the other guy, the one with the gun, giving it everything he had trying to get inside. A hand then shot through the gap. Thick fingers clawed at the air trying to grab at us. Benji grunted and shoved harder. Dude, help me! I threw myself against the door. The guy outside let out this furious roar, pushing back, fingers scraping against my arm the whole time. For a split second, I really thought he was about to win. I thought he was gonna get it open. If that happened, we'd be fucked for sure. But then from outside, I heard, "Move!" A gunshot exploded through the night. That sound was deafening in the enclosed space. I felt the impact of it on my chest like a punch from the inside. The guy outside cursed, jerking back, and we took the chance. Benji slammed the door shut and locked it into place. Silence. I staggered backward. My hands were shaking, adrenaline pouring through me like ice water. Neither of us were hit, thankfully, so we assumed they tried to shoot the door or the building, maybe even just up in the air to scare us. Benji was panting, staring at the door. Dude. Another bang. The guy outside punched the glass full force. Another bang. Again, bang. I could see a silhouette through the narrow windows. His breath was fogging up the glass. His posture was rigid with rage. His friend was standing right beside him, the gunman, and the two of them started circling the building, checking the windows and the other doors. "We gotta go to the back office now," Benji said, grabbing my sleeve. "Go, go." We ran deeper into the office, past empty desks and silent cubicles. The security office was in the back, just big enough for a desk and a few filing cabinets, and one single chair. But the door was solid wood, with a steel sheet inside of it, and it had a deadbolt. We threw ourselves inside and slammed it shut, locking it immediately. Outside, that banging continued. I grabbed my phone with shaking hands and punched in 911. Operator immediately answering.
911, what's your emergency?
"There's two guys trying to break into our office," I said. "One of them has a gun." Benji sat against the wall, gripping his knees, and his chest was heaving. "Are you in a safe location?" the dispatcher asked. It was kind of funny to hear that question. As a roadside assistant operator, that was literally the opening line of our script. "I think so," I said. "We're locked inside a back office." From outside, we heard another boom, and that sound made me jump. "What the fuck?" Benji hissed. I could tell he was getting agitated. I didn't have to wander for very long. I could hear weird faded beeps from outside. The keypad. They shot the damn keypad. "They're trying to get in," I whispered. Benji wiped his face, sweat slick on his forehead. "Shit, man, shit. This is crazy. We're like fish in a barrel. We should have never ran back in here." The dispatcher was still talking to me, but I barely heard any words she said. I was far too busy listening to the sounds of outside, the muffled voices, the hurried footsteps, the gunman cursing underneath his breath. I heard another shot, then nothing. The silence stretched on, and I could hardly take a breath. That's when I heard sirens. Red and blue lights flashed through the windows, painting the walls in frantic colors. Benji let out this breathless laugh, half hysteria, half relief. "Holy shit, man. Holy shit." We stayed locked in that room until the cops banged on the door and announced themselves. That's when we finally stepped out, and I got my first real look at the damage. The front door was a complete mess. Bullet holes in the keypads, cracked spider webbing across the glass. The cops questioned us, and we gave our statements, still shaking, still reeling. The two guys were long gone, disappeared off into the neighborhood, but we knew one thing for sure. They wanted us dead. And if we would have been a second slower, we would have been. The second we stepped out, it really hit me how close we'd actually been to dying. That front door was ruined. The keypad was a mangled mess of metal and shattered plastic. Bullet holes pocked the frame. A thin wisp of dust still curled from where the gunman had tried and failed to blast his way inside. A couple of the officers were already sweeping the area, flashlights cutting off through the dark. Another was waiting for us, notepad in hand. "Fellas okay?" he asked. Benji just barked out a laugh, the full weight of the situation finally washing over him. "Yeah, just fucking fantastic." I barely recognized my own voice when I spoke. Were they caught?" The cop shook his head. "They took off on foot before we arrived. We got units combing the area though, but no sign of them yet." Benji just ran a hand through his hair. Jesus Christ. The next 30 minutes were just a blur of questions and police chatter. We told him everything about the robbery, about the chase, about the fight at the door. An officer took photos of my arm where the guy had clawed at me. Another pointed out a smear of blood on the doorframe, the pavement where I fell. Damn, they wanted in bad, one of the cops muttered, eyeing those bullet holes. Yeah, no shit. Our boss, the owner-operator of the call center, showed up just after 3 a.m. He was an older guy, tough but fair. He looked at the damage with that kind of weary sigh that said he was already adding up the cost inside of his head. Jesus, boys, he said, rubbing a hand over his face. You okay? Benji was just staring at the shot-up door, jaw tight. I nodded at him. Yeah. Our boss exhaled. Well, you're done for the night. Go home and get some sleep. You're both on paid leave until this mess is sorted out. We didn't argue. We were far too wrung out, too drained. Benji drove me home and we barely spoke on the way there. But when I shut my apartment door behind me and locked it, that's when I finally let myself breathe a little and realized that my hands were still shaking. Those guys had been out for blood. And if we'd been just a second slower, we would have given it to them. I've been on the road for 12 hours straight, riding the line between exhaustion and hallucination when I first saw him. A lone figure on the shoulder, half illuminated by my high beams, thumb hanging out like he'd been carved into the desert night. The highway was nothing but a ribbon of black asphalt cutting through the scrub and the rock. No towns for miles. No reason for anybody to be out here. My first instinct was to keep driving. I've been warned far too many times. Don't pick up hitchhikers. But my guilt has a way of working its claws in. The longer I look at the figure shrinking in my rear view, the more it felt like I just left a body on the roadside. I don't know why I slowed, but I did. Tires humming against the asphalt as I pulled off onto the shoulder, gravel popping under the weight of my car. He jogged up, lanky and wiry, maybe in his mid-30s. Dirty jeans, canvas jacket, hair plastered to his forehead with sweat. When he opened up the door, I caught the sour smell of somebody who hadn't showered in definitely a few days, maybe more. He slid in without another word, clutching a ragged backpack up against his chest like it was the only thing anchoring him to earth. Thanks, he muttered. No problem, I said, putting us back on the road. Where are you heading? He glanced out the window, eyes scanning the darkness. Gas station, just the next one. Long way to be walking, I said, trying to keep the mood light. Lucky I came through, huh? He didn't laugh, he didn't even smile, he just kept staring off into the black desert. I figured maybe he was shy or strung out or maybe both. But a few miles later, I heard him muttering under his breath. Some kind of chant maybe. I looked over and saw his lips moving, eyes fixed on the side mirror. You okay over there? I asked. He blinked. We're fine, he said. Just keep driving, don't slow down. That sank into me. Not the kind of thing you want to hear at 1 a.m. in the middle of nowhere with a stranger riding shotgun. Don't slow down? I asked. They'll catch up if you do. His voice was calm, matter of fact, like he was telling me water was wet or the sky was blue. I gave him a nervous laugh back. Who's gonna catch up? But he didn't answer, just hugged that backpack tighter and kept looking out the window. I checked the mirror myself and my stomach nodded. A pair of headlights, distant, but they were gaining. I've been alone on the road for over an hour now, not a single car. Now suddenly there was somebody behind us. That a friend of yours? I asked. No, he responded. Just drive. I pressed the accelerator a little harder, engine whining as the speedometer climbed. The headlights behind us matched it perfectly. The car behind us stuck like glue. Every time I eased off the gas, its headlights swelled bigger in the mirror. When I pushed the pedal, it would match me, keeping just enough distance to make sure that my skin would crawl. I gripped the wheel tighter, my mouth was getting dry, while a stranger beside me muttered and clutched his backpack. Alright, you gonna tell me what's going on? I snapped. His voice dropped. They followed me, I got away, but they don't let people go. Nobody gets out. not for free. Okay, what do you mean they? Then he turned to me, face pale in the glow from the dash. Just keep driving. That wasn't an answer, at least not good enough for me. I tried telling myself it was a coincidence, that maybe it was just another innocent driver heading the same direction, but deep down, I think I knew better. It wasn't a coincidence. This was a pursuit. I flicked the headlights to high, leaning into the speed, 80, 85, 90. My tires buzzing against the asphalt, a low howl that made it feel like the car could lift off the road at any second. The headlights behind us grew smaller, then steadied, still keeping pace. "You're not gonna stop," that guy whispered. "Not till they have me back." I shot him another glance. His hands were trembling as they were clamped still over that backpack. What the hell's in there? Proof. His eyes flashed in the dark. Enough to ruin them. They can't let it get out. My blood iced over. I wanted to press for more, but there was a part of me that already knew the truth was probably uglier than I could actually stomach. Whoever these people were, they weren't just pissed off friends chasing down a runaway. It smelled bigger, dirtier. The road sign loomed up ahead of us, green letters shining gas, 15 miles. I clenched my jaw. 15 miles might as well have been 100 at this point. The car behind continued to inch closer, the glare of its high beams flooding my mirrors until I couldn't see a damn thing. The engine roared as it closed the gap. "Hold on," I barked over at him. They rammed us. Just a kiss at first. I shuddered through the frame of my car, enough to make the hitchhiker yelp. Then again a little harder, shoving us forward. My teeth rattled. I swerved, gripping the wheel like it was the only thing keeping me alive. "They're gonna force us off the road," he shouted. He was probably right, but all I could do was just brace for it. The highway curved left and I took it fast, the tires screaming against the pavement. The other car hung back for a breath, then lunged again, its headlights searing into my vision. I thought about letting him out, about slamming the brakes and tossing that stranger back on the road, handing him over to whatever nightmare he brought into my passenger seat. But I couldn't. It was too late for that now. I was in it. And then, blessed sight, the faint glow of lights on the horizon. The gas station. I floored it, praying the car wouldn't spin out before we actually made it. The station sat lonely in this island in the desert, buzzing neon signs and a couple of flickering lamps. No other cars, no other sign of life, just 4 pumps and a greasy little building squatting under the weight of the night. I slammed quickly into the lot, brakes damn near smoking, the smell of burnt rubber choking out in the air. The hitchhiker was out before we'd even fully stopped, immediately bolting for the door. I shouted at him to wait, but he was already gone, backpack slamming against his side as he sprinted inside. The other car peeled in behind us, engine growling, headlights snapping off, and for the first time, I saw the shape of it, this old black sedan, windows tinted dark. The doors creaked open in unison. 2 men then stepped out, big blocky shoulders, work boots hitting the concrete with slow, heavy steps. They didn't rush. Their confidence almost made my stomach turn again. One of them looked straight at me, a dead stare that pinned me to the seat. He then turned and followed that hitchhiker into the gas station. The other stayed outside, leaning up against the car, like a watchman. Now, I should have just driven off. Every nerve in my body screamed at me to floor it, get out of there, leave this stranger to whatever the hell he'd signed up for, but I sat there, frozen, my breath fogging up the windshield. My curiosity ended up being stronger than my fear, and maybe, just maybe, my guilt too. Through the door of the gas station, I could see the hitchhiker at the counter, shouting at the weary clerk. The man outside pulled something from his jacket, tucking it close to his leg. It had to be a gun. Now that broke the spell. I shoved my door open and staggered inside. My voice cracked. "Hey, what the hell's going on?" The one by the car turned his head slowly, like he couldn't believe I was dumb enough to step out. "Go home," he said, calm and quiet, the kind of voice that promised you didn't really want to hear it twice. But it was already too late. Inside the station, the hitchhiker ripped open his backpack, spilling out these papers and photos across the counter. The clerk's eyes went wide. He said something, frantic. I couldn't quite hear it through the glass. Then the second man stormed in, shoving the man against the shelves. A soda display crashed to the floor, cans rolled everywhere. The hitchhiker's voice broke through the chaos, desperate. "Call the cops. Don't let them take me back." And for a split second, I thought maybe, just maybe, he'd actually be saved. Then the man with the gun raised it, leveled it, and everything froze. I couldn't breathe, I couldn't move, could only watch as the desert night pressed in around us. The ugly truth of what I'd stumbled into finally bared its teeth. The moment stretched like it was caught in amber. My eyes locked on the barrel of that gun, the way it glinted under those lights. The hitchhiker froze, one arm still clutching the counter, his mouth hanging open mid-plea. I wanted to move, I wanted to do something, yell, rush in, knock the gun aside like in the movies, but I was rooted to the pavement, hands trembling uselessly at my side. The man outside, the watchman, never even looked away from me. He didn't need to say another word. The message was carved in stone: stay put or join him. A thunderclap cracked inside the station. The clerk screamed. The hitchhiker dropped like his strings had been cut, a smear of red blooming across the tile. Papers scattered across the floor, photos of men in uniforms, documents stamped with logos that I couldn't quite read from where I was. Evidence, at least that's what he said. Evidence that would obviously never leave that counter. The shooter knelt, grabbed the backpack, stuffed the scattered proof back inside with cold efficiency, then stood and calmly strode for the door. The clerk stood frozen behind the register, hands covering her mouth, eyes huge. Our gazes locked for a quick second, and I'll never forget that look. She knew she just witnessed something that she would never unsee. The two men stepped back out into the night, one carrying the backpack, the other wiping his hands across his jacket, and then tossed another glance at me, almost like I was less than dirt. They got back in the sedan, doors shut with muffled thuds. The engine purred to life, then they were gone, taillights shrinking back out on the black highway, just like that. I stumbled inside. The clerk was shaking, tears streaking down her cheeks, staring at the body on the floor. We need to call somebody," I stammered out. "The cops?" She shook her head violently, eyes still really wild. "No, you don't understand. You didn't see them. You didn't see them." "But he's dead." She grabbed my wrist hard enough to hurt, nails digging deep. "Go, right now. Leave before they come back. Forget that you were ever here." I yanked free, but the look in her eyes was really enough. Terror, not of me, not even of the dead man bleeding in her linoleum, but of whoever those men really worked for. I backed out of the station. My car sat under those buzzing lights, engine still warm, door hanging open. I climbed back inside. The road ahead was empty again, my headlights carving out a narrow path, and I drove it like a man possessed, half expecting to see those same red taillights to reappear in my mirror now at any second. But they didn't. The highway gave me nothing but silence and distance. Hours later, when I finally hit the outskirts of the next town, I pulled into a diner lot and sat there until dawn, watching the sun crawl up over the desert. I called the police. How could I not? I made a report over the phone, and the dispatcher knew exactly what I was talking about. An officer met me at the diner an hour later to get some more details from me. It was some kind of ongoing murder investigation. I told him everything, especially about how the clerk told me to go. They said they were taking extra time to look into her as well. The vibe I got was that she was some kind of drug dealer of some kind, and the hitcher was involved with her. The cop left, and I was all alone. So I just sat there, silently, until the smell of coffee drifted out of the parking lot and the world started moving again like nothing had happened. And that's when I realized, whatever that man had been running from, it wasn't just his nightmare. He handed me a piece of it the second I let him into my car. We'd been on the road for 6 hours when I saw her. The four of us all packed into Josh's beat-up old Corolla, windows fogged from our breath, the smell of stale fries and gas station coffee turning the cabin quickly sour. College road trips always sounded better than they actually were. On paper, it was supposed to be freedom, music, inside jokes, but in reality, it was endless stretches of asphalt, cramped legs, and everybody getting irritable in waves. The highway dipped through a long stretch of pine, then spat us out by this old railroad crossing. And that's where she stood. A girl barefoot in the gravel, one arm hugging her stomach, the other stuck out half-heartedly in the universal, pick-me-up gesture. Torn jeans, hoodie 2 sizes too big, hair knotted into greasy ropes. Josh was slowing down before anybody could say a word. Dude, what are you doing? I asked him. What? She looks like she needs help. He squinted through the windshield. It's freezing out there. I don't care if it's freezing, man. This is how horror movies start. Sarah leaned forward from the back seat, voiced soft. Come on, she actually looks our age. Would you want to be left out here? I'll admit that shut me up because no, I wouldn't. And I knew if I was stranded, I'd pray somebody with a shred of compassion would stop for me too. So Josh pulled over. The girl walked up, quite hesitant at first, then faster when she realized we weren't driving off. She bent down and peered into the window. Up close, she looked even worse. Her lips were pale, nose was red, eyes glassy with clear exhaustion. You headed into town? She asked. Her voice was rough, like she'd been screaming or crying recently. Yeah, Josh said. Hop in. She slid in the middle of the back seat, pressing close to Sarah. She smelled like sweat and dirt, that kind of dirty you can't really fake. She hugged herself tight and kept her eyes down. Thanks, she whispered. I just need a ride away from here. Nobody spoke for a moment. The only sound was the heater rattling weakly, trying to push back the chill. Finally, I cleared my throat. So what are you doing out here? Her shoulders tensed. Running. Running from what? It doesn't matter. She glanced up. The look in her eyes made me shut my mouth. It was wide, alert, scanning each of us like she was calculating whether we were a bigger threat than whatever she'd escaped from. Josh turned the music down. Where do you want us to drop you off? Just keep driving, she said. I'll tell you when. The 4 of us kind of exchanged confused looks, and nobody argued. I kept staring out the window as the pines thickened again, pressing close to the road. My stomach knotted. Something about the way she said running. Not walking, not leaving, but running. It really was sticking with me. I didn't know it then, but letting her into the car meant that we'd already crossed a line that we could no longer come back from. The girl really didn't say much after that. She just stared out the window, hands buried deep in the sleeves of her hoodie, rocking slightly. Every once in a while, Sarah would try to strike up some kind of conversation. Where are you from? Do you need to call somebody? But the girl's answers were clipped and clearly evasive. Josh kept glancing at me in the passenger seat, his expression saying what we both were thinking. Maybe picking her up hadn't been such a great idea, but none of us had the guts to actually say it out loud. 20 minutes passed, then 30. No towns, no lights, just the highway. I finally turned around, trying to sound casual. You said you needed a ride into town, right? Which town? She blinked, like she hadn't really thought that far ahead. Just keep going. I'll know when. I didn't like that answer. Look, we can drop you off at a gas station or a diner or something, somewhere safe. Her eyes flicked to mine, very cold-like. I said, I'll tell you when. The way she said that sent a ripple through the car. Sarah leaned back, folding her arms. Evan, who'd been quiet the whole trip, finally muttered, creepy. Josh cleared his throat. All right, we're not gonna go too far off route though. We still got a long drive ahead of us. That's when she spoke up again. There's a shortcut up ahead. Turn right at the next dirt road. I frowned. Okay, shortcut to where exactly? To town. Her lips twitched into something that might have been a smile, though it never really reached her eyes. Josh's hands tightened on the wheel. I could see the hesitation clearly on him, but he was always too trusting in people. All right, I guess if it's quicker. The dirt road appeared out of the darkness, a thin strip vanishing into heavy woods. Josh turned onto it, gravel pinged against the undercarriage. The headlights cut this narrow tunnel through the trees. Every nerve in my body was screaming that this is wrong. This isn't what we should be doing. We hadn't passed another car in an hour. and now we're leaving the only highway that actually might lead to somewhere. But the girl just leaned back in her seat, finally looking relaxed, and that really scared me more than anything else. "See?" she said. "Told you." The deeper we went, the worse it continued to feel, though. No houses, no mailboxes, just trees and blackness. The dirt road narrowed rougher with every bend, until it felt less like a road now and more like a trail. Evan leaned forward between the seats. "Dude, this is not a shortcut. There's no way." Josh slowed down a little. "How much further?" "Not far," the girl responded back. I twisted in my seat to face her again. "Look, I don't really know what's going on, but this doesn't feel right. Where exactly are you taking us?" "Almost there." Again, the way she talks, the way she said everything, it was really starting to terrify me. And then the first set of headlights appeared off in the trees to the left, half hidden, then another on the right. Parked vehicles, their shapes hulking in the dark. A pickup, an SUV, another car. My chest went cold. "Josh," I said, "turn around now." Before he could do much, the figures stepped out of the trees, 3, 4, 5 of them, shadows moving up the road, lit up in the headlights. Men, big men, their faces cast in shadow, but their posture said everything we needed to know. They'd been waiting for us. Josh slammed on the brakes. The car skidded to a stop, dust clouding the beams. The girl straightened up, suddenly more calm and collected. She looked at us, finally meeting each of our eyes in turn. "Hey, thanks for the ride," she said. The doors opened and the men started toward us, slow and steady. One had a flashlight. Another held something heavier, maybe a pipe, maybe a bat. My stomach immediately flipped. Sarah gasped out loud. "Oh my God." Evan swore under his breath. "She set us up. She fucking set us up." Josh fumbled for reverse, tires spinning as the car jerked backwards. The men then surged forward, shouting, hands pounding on the hood. One yanked at the driver's handle. Another pounded the glass by my head. "Go, go!" I screamed. Josh floored it. The Corolla jolted backward, swerving off the road and then into a ditch. The bumper slammed hard in the dirt, and the tires squealed as he fought for the wheel. One of the men slipped in front of us, and Josh swerved again, missing him only by inches. The girl didn't move. She sat perfectly still, hands folded in her lap, watching us like we were nothing more than a delivery that had arrived early. We hit the dirt road again, fishtailing. The men shouted, one of them running after us for a few yards before fading off into the dark. The headlights of the parked vehicle snapped on, and the engines roared to life. "They're coming," Sarah said. I twisted in my seat. Sure enough, beams of lights were cutting through the dust, bearing down fast. Josh was white-knuckling the wheel. "Hold on," he barked. The Corolla screamed down the trail, bouncing over ruts, barely holding together. The trees whipped past in a blur. My heart was currently in my throat, waiting for the moment one of those bigger trucks to ram us from behind, flip us back into a ditch. But somehow, by some miracle, we burst back out onto the highway. The other vehicles didn't seem to be following either. We drove in silence, every one of us heaving for breath, hearts pounding like war drums. Nobody dared to speak, not even Sarah this time. Finally, I turned around, and the back seat was empty. The girl was gone. The silence in the car was heavier than anything I've ever felt. All 4 doors were locked. Engine was screaming down a highway, but the space between Sarah was now empty. The hoodie, the bare feet, the sour smell, gone, like she'd never even been there. Josh's voice cracked. "Where the fuck did she go?" "She was just right," Sarah stammered out, spinning around, her hand patting the seat like the girl might have slipped under it somehow. "She was just here." "No fucking way," Evan muttered, shaking his head. His face was ghost white. "No way. She got out back there. She must have, when the guys were on us." But I was watching. I saw her sitting perfectly still, hands folded. She hadn't moved a muscle when we tore out of that trap. There hadn't been time for her to jump out. No chance she could have slipped free without us noticing it. But she must have, right? Look, it doesn't matter how, she's gone now, and we need to keep driving. Josh didn't argue with me. He pushed the car a little harder. None of us looked back, terrified we'd see those headlights flaring up in the distance again. It wasn't until nearly an hour later, when the lights of a real town finally glowed on the horizon, that anybody spoke up. Sarah's voice was barely audible. She wasn't running from anyone. And we all know she was right. She didn't need saving. She'd been bait, dangled out there like meat on a hook, waiting for some bleeding heart idiot to scoop her up and deliver her straight to the jaws of whatever the hell operation those men were running. We rolled into town just after dawn, pulling into a diner lot like survivors. We didn't even go inside, we just sat there, faces pale, eyes empty. I kept thinking about her last words when she was in the car. Almost there. She hadn't been talking about any town. She'd been talking about the trap, and we'd driven her right to it. Even now, years later, when I pass a lone hitchhiker on some forgotten back road, I grip the wheel and keep driving because I know better. Some people aren't running from danger. Some people are the danger.
I turned 12 that summer when the most unbelievable thing happened in our quiet little town. A water park called Aqua Blast opened its doors to the public. It became the sole topic of conversation. My best friend Alex and I came across a pamphlet for it, promising enormous slides twisting like snakes, wave pools rolling like the ocean, and a lazy river that offered ultimate relaxation. Naturally, we were both eager to go. For weeks, we pleaded with our parents, exhibiting our best behavior, and even doing some extra chores. We went all out, and at last, our efforts paid off. Our parents gave us 2-day passes to Aqua Blast. The day we went was perfect. The sun shone brightly, the sky was an ideal blue, and the air buzzed with anticipation. We met at the entrance of Aqua Blast, practically bouncing with excitement. As we entered, the park was even more incredible than we had imagined. The sheer size of it was astonishing, with people everywhere laughing, screaming, and splashing around. Alex and I headed straight for the biggest slide, called the Mega Plunge. It was a massive slide with a nearly vertical drop that promised a surge of pure adrenaline. We waited in line for what seemed like forever. Finally reaching the top, my heart pounded against my ribs, but Alex showed no fear. He was smiling widely, like a maniac. We climbed into the inflatable raft provided by the attendant, and then he gave us a push. For the next few seconds, we were a whirlwind of wind and water. The ground vanished beneath us as we rushed down the slide. I felt a blend of terror and excitement, and when we got to the bottom, the rush of water was momentarily blinding. After recovering from our initial adventure, we spent the rest of that afternoon exploring the park. We braved the wave pool, which tossed us around like rag dolls, and leisurely floated down the lazy river, basking in the sun. As hours passed by, the crowd began to thin, but Alex and I decided to try one more slide before heading home. The Aqua Twister. Unlike the others, the Aqua Twister wasn't about speed or height. It was about disorientation. It consisted of enclosed, twisting tunnels that plunged you into darkness, spun you around, then ejected you into a pool of water. "This looks awesome. I can't wait," said Alex, his eyes shining with mischief. As for myself, I was uncertain. "Are you sure? This seems a bit intense," I told him. Alex called me a chicken and assured me that it would be fun, promising that he would be there with me. I knew if I backed out, he would tell everyone that I was a coward, and I would have to face teasing all summer long. So, I swallowed my fear and agreed to go. The line was short, and before long, we were at the entrance. The attendant, who was a bored teenager, outlined the rules. and we hurried inside. The entrance was a dim tunnel, and as we stepped in, darkness enveloped us. A chill ran down my spine. I couldn't see a damn thing. "You ready?" Alex asked, his voice echoing. "As ready as I'll ever be," I replied, trying to sound braver than I felt. Suddenly, the ground disappeared, and we fell into darkness. The tunnel twisted and turned, spinning us around. I lost all sense of direction. All I could feel was the rush of wind and the cold, damp slide against my skin. I yelled, but my voice was swallowed by the abyss. I could hear Alex shouting too. His voice was distorted and distant. The spinning made me dizzy, and nausea surged through me. Just as abruptly as it started, the ride ended, and I was ejected into a pool of water. Gasping for breath, blinking, I tried to regain my bearings. Alex was right next to me, coughing and sputtering as well. "That was intense," he said, his voice trembling. "Intense is an understatement. I think I'm going to be sick," I replied, still catching my breath. We climbed out of the pool and rested on a nearby bench, trying to recover. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the park. The air had cooled, and the sounds of laughter and splashing had faded. I decided that I had enough of water slides for one day, though we could always return tomorrow. Alex nodded in agreement as we headed toward the exit. Our excitement had been replaced by exhaustion and unease. Passing the aqua twister, I couldn't resist glancing back. Its dark, foreboding entrance seemed to stare at me. We were nearing the main gate when the craziest thing happened. Frantic cries and screams erupted from the pool area. Turning around, we saw people shouting for help and pointing toward the center of the pool. Curiosity overtook us as we dashed toward the chaos. When we got to the pool's edge, we saw why everyone was panicking. A group of people were struggling in the water, their faces twisted with fear. I asked a woman nearby what was happening. In a quivering voice, she said that she didn't know, only that something was dragging people beneath the water. Alex and I exchanged looks of disbelief, then moved closer to the pool. We had to help. As we waded deeper, I felt a particular sensation tugging at my feet. Looking down, I saw the water swirling around me. Before I could react, something hot and constricting wrapped around my ankle and pulled me under. I gasped, swallowing a mouthful of water. I struggled desperately, but whatever held me was too strong, dragging me deeper down. Panic set in. I couldn't breathe, and my lungs ached. I fought with all my strength, but it was futile. I was starting to lose consciousness when, suddenly, the grip released me, and I swam to the surface, emerging and gasping for air. Alex rushed over, grabbed my hand, and pulled me over to the pool's edge, where I collapsed, coughing and sputtering. "What the hell happened?" Alex asked, his face filled with concern. In a raspy voice, I told him that something had dragged me under the water, something that was unbelievably strong. We looked back at the pool. The thrashing swimmers had reached the edge, and the water was calm again. Whatever had been pulling people down, lifeguards were clearing the pool, and people were rushing toward the exits. The park was closing early, and everyone had to leave. Alex and I blended into the crowd, trembling, our thoughts in a whirl. We didn't speak until we were outside, standing in the parking lot. "Dude, what the hell was that?" Alex asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "I have no idea, but I never want to experience anything like this ever again. Let's get out of here." We walked home in silence, the day's events heavy on our minds. Once we got back, I took a hot shower, trying to wash the memory away. But that night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the dark water, the swirling currents, and the shadowy figure that had grabbed my ankle. I tossed and turned. The next day, local news was filled with reports about the incident at Aqua Blast. Witnesses described seeing a bizarre whirlpool and claimed that something was dragging people under. Park officials dismissed the reports, blaming the overcrowding and panic, but Alex and I knew better. We knew that something unusual and terrifying had happened at Aqua Blast, and we vowed to never return. A few weeks later, Aqua Blast was closed indefinitely. The official reason was never clear, but I knew the truth. To this day, I still feel chills when I think back on it. It was a frightening experience that I'll never forget, and it taught me a valuable lesson. Sometimes, the things that can seem the most fun can also be the most dangerous. It was a dreary Monday morning when this all began. I entered the office that day, ready to tackle another long work shift. I was just an ordinary guy, interning at a small tech company. The office was a mixture of open areas, cubicles, and a single brick room stocked with a coffee maker and vending machines. My coworkers were friendly, and I got along with most of them, except for one guy named Carl. Carl was in his late 30s and 4 years older than me. He always made me uneasy. His hair was perpetually disheveled, and he sported a scruffy beard. He wore the same untidy flannel shirts, old jeans, and black boots every day. He was highly skilled at coding, but his social skills were severely lacking. He often made nonsensical or confusing comments. During lunch, Carl usually sat in the break room, while I tried to keep my distance. But he always found a way to insert himself into my conversations. That day, as I ate lunch at my desk, Carl leaned over, his eyes wide with enthusiasm.
Jake, did you know that the human soul departs the body for 7 minutes after death?
I chuckled nervously, unsure how to respond. No, I wasn't aware of that, I said, hoping that he would change the subject. Instead, he launched into an elaborate tale about communicating with the dead, or spirits, whatever. I quickly finished my meal and excused myself, hurrying away before I felt like fainting or yelling at him to leave me alone. Over the next few days, Carl's odd behavior grew stranger. He was often seen whispering to himself or staring blankly at his laptop, fingers poised above the keys. Other coworkers, including the boss, began avoiding him, leaving me feeling guilty for being the only one left, still willing to engage with him. One Friday afternoon, everything changed. The office was quiet, with most people gone for the weekend. I was wrapping up some tasks when I sensed that there was someone behind me. Turning around, I nearly jumped. Carl was right there, his face much closer than I expected.
Do you believe in ghosts, Jake?
Not really, I replied softly. He smiled. It was extremely unsettling.
I believe they're everywhere, and sometimes they communicate with me.
I nodded, not really sure how to respond. Suddenly, the light above us flickered. I brushed it off as a power issue and stammered that I had to get back to work, hoping that would be the end of the conversation. As I turned back to my tasks, I heard Carl's heavy breathing before he walked away. A chill ran down my spine. Monday arrived, and things took a darker turn. I got to the office early to get a head start on some paperwork. I thought I was by myself, except for maybe my boss. Then I heard a strange noise coming from the break room. It sounded like muffled voices talking. Curiosity got the best of me, and I decided to investigate. As I crept down the quiet aisle toward the break room, that familiar dread returned. As I closed in, the voices grew louder and louder. I could distinguish one as Carl's deep tone, while the other was soft and eerie, very unnatural sounding. I was wondering what Carl was up to, and who he might have been talking to. Peering through the break room's glass door, I saw him standing alone in the corner, arms raised, murmuring quietly. I pushed open the door and asked, "Carl, are you all right?" He spun around, and his wide, frantic eyes gave him an almost otherworldly appearance.
I'm trying to reach them. They're trying to communicate with me.
Who's trying to communicate with you? I asked, backing toward the door. He ignored me, resuming his bizarre chanting. Caught between curiosity and a rising dread, I told Carl that he had to stop right now. Suddenly, the lights flickered and the air turned cold. Fear washed over me as Carl's chanting grew frantic. Then a loud crash echoed from down the hall, making me nearly leap out of my skin. "What was that?" I said, my heart racing. Carl turned to me.
They're angry. We need to listen.
I wanted to flee, but my feet felt like they were glued to the ground, holding me in place. A minute later, I snapped out of it and bolted out of the break room. Grabbing my phone from my desk, I called the police. Glancing back at the break room window, I saw that Carl had vanished, and the office became eerily silent. The cops came and swept the building, but Carl was nowhere to be seen. I spent the rest of that day on edge, glancing over my shoulder. As my other coworkers arrived, I asked one of them from marketing named Sarah, "Hey, have you seen Carl today?" "No, but he's been acting so strange lately. He left early on Friday looking pale and shaky, and I just dismissed it as his quirky personality." Something felt off to me. I couldn't shake the sense that he was in danger, or worse. It was a few days later when the situation escalated. Carl was still absent, and I couldn't stop thinking about what I saw in the break room. It was that Friday, after hours, that I returned to the office to investigate. Something was telling me that I had to be there. As I stepped inside, the lights flickered ominously. "Carl, are you here?" My voice echoed in the empty space, sending chills through my body. Heading toward the break room, my dread intensified. Suddenly I heard a clear whisper.
Help us.
It was faint, and it sounded like it was coming from the supply closet. My heart raced as I approached cautiously, my hands shaking. Is someone there? The door creaked open, and the lights flickered erratically. A stack of cardboard boxes tumbled, revealing Carl, sitting in a corner, looking terrified.
They're trapped. I can help them,
he murmured, not acknowledging my presence. I grabbed his arm. "Carl, we need to get the hell out of here." He turned, fear and confusion in his eyes.
They need me, Jake.
The lights suddenly went out, plunging us into the dark. A cold breeze swept through, and a furious, commanding voice boomed.
"Don't interrupt."
Carl gasped, and terror gripped me. "It's not safe here. We have to go," I said, pulling him to his feet. As the lights flickered back on, shadow forms seemed to swirl around us like smoke. I dragged Carl out of the closet, rushing toward the exit. The whispers intensified, trying to pull us back. We burst out of the office, the cool night air hitting us as we sprinted back to the parking lot. Pausing to catch my breath, I glanced back. The office lights flickered one last time before going dark.
What just happened?
I have no idea, but we need to report this to someone. Driving home that night, I couldn't shake the feeling that these strange events were far from over. I was worried about Carl and the bizarre forces he believed in. That night taught me a very valuable lesson. Curiosity can lead to frightening places. But even so, I had a moral obligation to help Carl. I didn't want to leave him there in a state of delirium, where he would have to face these unknown horrors alone. No matter how bizarre or terrifying the situation was, I stood by my principles, and I'll do so in the future, regardless of whatever may be lurking in the shadows. There was a story on your channel some time ago about a young lady who was on vacation at a Disney resort in South Carolina, where she encountered a disturbing individual wearing a vintage Mickey Mouse mask. I want to make something perfectly clear. My experience has no connection to hers, and I'm not suggesting that it was the same person she encountered, but I have also seen someone wearing that god-forsaken mask as well. It's something that you never forget. Rumor has it that Disney discontinued that mask because it was just too terrifying for children. The fact that it was ever considered appealing to begin with remains a mystery to me. But enough pretext. Let's get into the story. I still remember this like it was yesterday, even though it happened all the way back in 2004, the year I began first grade. The first day of school always brings some excitement and nervousness, but in my opinion, nothing compares to your very first day of school, the day that you leave daycare and kindergarten behind and officially enter the public education system. For some, that alone might sound like the start of a scary story, but for me, most of my sparse memories of that day are quite pleasant. My teacher was lovely, my classmates were mostly nice, and the classroom felt like an exciting place to learn. I'd even say my first day of elementary school was fun. Unfortunately, the same cannot be said for the bus ride home. Since I was the only kid from my neighborhood attending that school, my bus stop was not only the last one on the route, but it also was created just for me. My parents and principal had given me very specific instructions on where it was, so I would know where to be dropped off. I also knew that one of my parents would be waiting for me at the stop to make things easier. After all, I was only 6 years old. The trouble started when we got to the second to last stop, and I was the only kid left on the bus. "Hey, you, get off the bus," the driver barked. It wasn't just the volume, but the sharp, stern tone that startled and confused me. Not only were my parents nowhere in sight, but the neighborhood looked completely unfamiliar. When I tried to explain this, the driver only got angrier. "Get off right now, or you'll never be allowed to ride the bus again." Her words filled me with dread. I was a quiet, reserved kid who hated confrontation. My father, the only driver in our family, worked downtown, and my mom wasn't comfortable letting me walk alone. The school bus would be the only way I could get to and from school. The thought of being banned from riding it on my very first day was terrifying. Scared into silence, I got off the bus without another word. I regretted it immediately as the bus drove away. Though my parents had drilled my home address into me, I navigated the world by landmarks, trees, lawn decorations, house roof colors, and even cracks in the sidewalk, but never street signs, not till I was around 10. As I took in my surroundings, the dread returned. The neighborhood was quaint and peaceful, but completely foreign to me. I was a shy, soft-spoken 6-year-old girl who was lost, terrified, and alone. Well, not entirely alone. As I made my way aimlessly down the sidewalk, with tears welling up in my eyes, I saw someone standing in the alley between two houses on my left. They were severely out of place. It was someone wearing dark clothing, a baggy jacket, and a black and white Mickey Mouse mask, its soulless eyes staring directly at me. As soon as I saw him, I burst into tears, closing my eyes. Seconds later, I heard familiar voices calling to me. It was two twin boys who rode my bus. They were a couple of grades above me. They had gotten off at the same stop and had begun to make their way back home when they heard me crying and quickly came back. I looked back to the alleyway, but the masked man was gone. "What are you looking for?" one of them asked. I saw a man wearing a mouse mask standing there just a second ago." "Well, there's no one there now. You probably just saw something because you were scared." After asking me a few more questions, they quickly came up with a plan. One of them would stay with me, while the other went home to get their dad. After a few minutes of standing there, and me nervously looking back to the now empty alleyway, a beige car pulled up beside us. The boy that stayed with me said his father would take me home, and open the rear passenger door for me. I saw his twin brother in the back seat, gesturing for me to get in. But my worries weren't over just yet. My parents also taught me about stranger danger, and I was already shaken to my core because of what I saw in the alley. The thought of getting into a car with a man I had just met and giving him my home address made me want to cry, but I knew if I didn't, I would remain lost. That fear was the only reason I got into the car and told him where I lived. The drive was much shorter than I expected. I had been dropped off just a couple of blocks from my street. Still shaking and full of adrenaline, I felt no relief. It wasn't until I was home and safely in my grandfather's embrace that I could finally relax. To say my parents were furious would be an understatement. The school took the incident seriously, and as soon as they found a replacement, the driver was fired. Neither I nor anyone else had another experience like that again. My claims about seeing someone in a Mickey Mouse mask were basically dismissed as a hallucination. Looking back, I sometimes feel embarrassed, especially since I was only a 10-minute walk from my house. Then I remember I was just 6 years old when that driver threatened to ban me from the bus. I was, and still am, tall for my age, so she might have thought I was older. But no child deserves to be spoken to like that, especially on their first day of school. I am forever grateful to those boys for caring enough to help. Otherwise, who knows what might have happened to me that day. For years I've questioned if I actually saw a man wearing that Mickey Mouse mask that day. I suppose it's possible that it could have been my imagination, but I think it's more likely that it was someone trying to break into one of those houses. But to a lost, frightened little girl, it might as well have been the devil himself standing there. I'm sharing this story anonymously for reasons that will become obvious later on. And before we get into this, I just want to preface this experience and warn everyone listening. This is probably going to be one of the most fucked up stories you've heard in a while. I was inspired to share this when I saw how poorly the release of the Epstein files was handled. Not to suggest that my story has anything to do with that, but to let young folks know that these sadistic, hellbound demons have been doing this sort of bullshit for a very long time, and they always pay off the right people to get away with it. And then guys like me are labeled conspiracy theorists, but the truth is that it's more convenient for people to buy into the lies. Anyway, this happened during the summer of 1987, on a sunny afternoon in the Sunshine State. I worked for the Coast Guard back in those days, but on that day, I was off duty. after working a string of 12-hour shifts pulling weakened boaters out of trouble. I was doing some fishing in my little Ranger boat. I had my cooler of beer, my fishing rod, and was listening to a baseball game over the radio. I eventually motored out past the markers into open water, then cut the engine off a few miles offshore, allowing the current to do the work. I wasn't getting any bites, but I was too angry at the Mets to care. There was no one out on the water that day. I fished around this area a few times before, but never in this particular section. I was pretty sure I was off the coast of some private property, but there was no signage to indicate so. So I carried on. I would say it was around 4, maybe 4:30, when I spotted something in the water, maybe 3/4 of a mile west. At first, I thought it was a freighter, or maybe a cruise ship, but as I drifted closer, I saw that it was a yacht, the kind you see tied up at the fancy marinas in Fort Lauderdale. The ones that make you wonder who on earth could afford them, except this one wasn't moving at all. And there was no anchor chain. It looked like it was just drifting. I throttled up to it, curious. Yachts this size just don't go adrift without someone noticing. Maybe there was engine trouble, or maybe there was a medical emergency. I grabbed my bullhorn. "Hello, is anyone there? Do you need assistance?" No one responded. I tried again, louder this time. Still nothing. I could see a name on the stern now. Serafina, in gold script. The deck looked deserted. I had an inkling that this could be an illegal drug transport vessel. We dealt with those a lot back in those days. But I figured even the drug cartels wouldn't want a yacht of this size drifting off the coast to be spotted by some asshole in a fishing boat. It was more likely that something happened on board, and the boat was either abandoned, or someone was below deck, incapacitated. I should have turned around, but I had spent enough years in the guard pulling people out of bad situations to know that silence on the water usually means trouble. I eased my boat alongside and tied up to the platform, then climbed aboard onto the yacht's main deck. "Hello? Anyone aboard?" No answer. The yacht looked pristine, cushions tight, no cups or towels scattered around, no sign of recent use. The salon doors were open, so I stepped inside, keeping one hand on the knife on my belt. "Hello? Is anyone here?" I called again. Still nothing. The interior looked how you would expect it to. Cream leather, polished wood. Whoever owned this boat had some serious money. I then noticed a half-finished drink sitting on the bar. The ice was almost gone, and a pool of water was below it. Remembering this still gives me the chills, because it was the first indication that I wasn't alone. I moved toward a stairwell that led to the lower cabins. That's when I heard it. A low, wet sound. Not mechanical. It was like someone chewing something. My stomach dropped. I drew my knife. I had a .38 back on the Ranger, but I was too caught up in the moment to go back to get it. The sound grew louder as I eased down the steps. The lower corridor was dim. The doors to the guest cabins were all closed, except for one at the far end, where the sound was coming from. I rounded the doorway and froze. I could not believe what I saw. There was an older man, maybe late 60s, completely naked. He appeared to be wearing a pair of headphones that were connected to a record player behind him. He was kneeling on the carpet. In front of him was a boy. Couldn't have been older than 10. Most of his face was gone. The old man was eating him, making that wet sound. I like to think the boy was already dead, but I swear I could see his lower jaw moving with his eyes wide open. The man's head then snapped up. His mouth was red, with strings of tissue hanging from his chin. Eyes wide, pupils blown. I recognized that look. He was on something. "Who the hell are you?" he snarled. I turned and ran. I still kicked myself mentally for not burying that knife into that man's head. I ran across the salon, back out onto the deck. My heart was pounding as I vaulted for the rail. I yanked the Ranger's line free and shoved off hard. I then rammed the throttle forward. I was maybe 100 yards out when the first crack came. Sharp, flat, louder than the motor. I ducked instinctively, then glanced back. I could see someone on the yacht's deck, aiming a rifle. Another shot rang out. But fortunately, he missed again. I kept the throttle pinned, not looking back until the yacht was just a white speck against the horizon. My hand shook so bad, I could barely hold course. Back at the dock, I called it in on a payphone outside the marina office. First, local PD. Then, my watchmaster at the station. I told them everything, and they took it serious. 30 minutes later, I saw choppers combing the area. I gave my statement, giving every detail I could. I wanted this man to be found and arrested. I also felt overwhelming regret for not taking matters into my own hands. This is something that still haunts me to this day. I came face to face with pure evil, and I fled like a coward. Back then, I was naively patriotic and believed that the law holds people accountable, even if they have deep pockets. I know better now. A day later, I got the call. Not from the local PD, but from my own Master Chief. He told me to report to the office ASAP. I drove to the station with a knotted stomach. I could tell this was serious. Whatever he wanted to tell me, he wanted to do so in person. When I got there, he slid a single piece of paper across his desk. It was a typed memo. There was a classified stamp crossed out, but still visible. "The incident you reported has been handled." Handled how? Handled. The vessel was recovered. There were no bodies and no evidence of foul play. Official finding, mechanical failure. Accidental grounding later that night. Case closed. "But, sir, there was a kid, and the guy was..." "I know what you reported, and I'm telling you, that didn't happen." "That's bullshit, sir." He got up and closed his office door. "You're going to take some time off, and you're going to forget all about this. You mention this to the press, to anyone, and your time in the service ends tomorrow. Understand? Orders came down directly from the top this morning. I suggest you forget all about this, and be grateful that you're not being arrested for trespassing. You were fishing in private waters." I was in shock, completely dumbfounded. The chief then took a seat directly next to me and spoke in a low voice. "Look, I like you, so I'm going to give it to you straight. They're going to make life hell for you and your family. For your sake and for theirs. Forget about this." I drove home that day, feeling numb. I sat in the driveway for a long time with the engine running. I can still hear it sometimes, that awful wet, chewing sound. The man's eyes looking up at me, not afraid, just annoyed that someone had interrupted him. I don't know who he was, but I do know this. He wasn't some drifter or junkie who stumbled onto a boat. He had money, connections, people who could make a crime scene vanish and threaten a Coast Guard man's career to keep quiet. I think about the kind of people who can do that, the kind who drift through the world, untouchable, indulging in things the rest of us couldn't even imagine, the kind that get protected when the rest of us will be locked away forever. I kept my mouth shut for almost 40 years, and I don't do much fishing these days. But when I do see a big white yacht in the water, I flip it off. When I went home for 3 weeks about a month and a half ago, my dad and I decided we should do a bit of night fishing. I'm not a huge fan of night fishing, or any sort of fishing, or my dad for that matter. Our personalities are way too similar, and if you leave us together for more than an hour, there may be blood left over by the time he and I are done playing several dozen rounds of fisticuffs between the stubborn arguing and shouting. Anyways, Dad decided to take me to this river up by our new house that they had just finished building. My mom and brother stayed behind while we made our way through the dark woods. Now my family lives in Oregon, and the river was about 1.5 miles from my family's property, over massive fallen trees and stumps that I could easily trip on. Not knowing the lay of the land, my dad merely scoffed at me and reminded me that city living makes you soft. He didn't use those words exactly, just something along those lines, like some stereotypical cowboy from a Western film. I blame the fact that I didn't know this area as well as he did, and things just spiraled downhill from there, and arguing broke out between us, making the peaceful night loud and chaotic. We didn't stop arguing the entire way down to the river, my father critiquing my less than Christian lifestyle, while I criticized his manner of parenting my 20-year-old autistic brother. By the time we got to the river, we finally settled into an awkward, tense silence as we got our gear out. I knew that this fight was far from over as I sat down on a fallen stump, freezing my ass off. I had lived in a warm climate for over a year, and honestly, coming out here was probably his way of punishing me for leaving the Pacific Northwest. We refused to talk to each other as our lights danced across the water. Then my dad suddenly stood up, his light landing on the other side of the river. There, on the other bank, stood a man, looking right at us. He wore a bright orange t-shirt and a pair of scraggly jeans. For the most part, he was pretty average looking, except for the machete that was hanging off his belt. My dad snapped at me to start packing up all of our things, and so I followed his command as my dad started shouting something at the man across the river. Their conversation was mostly lost to the roar of the white-capped river, but I could see the man making agitated sweeps with his hand every time I looked up. Their voices grew louder, and my fear grew with it. My father has never been one to carry protection in the woods, hence why I was born. This man was armed and possibly dangerous with that machete, and while we had a river between us, it was shallow and had plenty of places to cross. I had no doubts this man could be behind us in mere minutes. Had we wandered onto his property by mistake and just didn't know about it? "Drop the gear and let's go," my dad snarled at me as I took one last look up to see the man starting to walk in the water. My dad then put a firm hand on my shoulder and led me back into the woods toward our house. My dad is an ultra-marathoner. He runs like it's going out of style, and my mostly out-of-shape self probably wouldn't have been able to keep up. I couldn't hear if the man was coming after us. My heart was beating so loud in my ears, but I followed my dad so closely, I almost ran into him several times. Finally, we found our road and made a break back for my parents' house. As soon as we were through the front door, my dad had all the doors locked and was keeping watch out the windows, making sure no crazy men with machetes were creeping up to our house. Finally, when we figured out there were no men wearing orange t-shirts out there, we sat down and began to talk about our experience with my mom. We left at the part where we had been arguing, but told her everything else. We went to bed that night without apologizing. The next day, with the only gun he owned, my father and I walked back out into the woods after calling the police. They said that there was a man who enjoyed scaring people off the forest land, and that we shouldn't be too concerned about it. Feeling a bit sheepish, we went back to the place where we had left our gear. both of us apologizing for our lackluster behavior the night before. When we got back to what we believed to be the spot, we saw our fishing poles had been bent and the lines had been draped from tree to tree. The tackle box was gone. The good news is, me and my dad didn't fight again for the rest of my trip home. This went on for over the course of a year, with the last incident taking place in December of 2016. I used to own this green 1998 Toyota Camry. It was my grandmother's until she gifted it to my parents, who eventually gave it to me as my first car. It was nice and reliable. But I have this bad habit of letting my cars accumulate a bunch of stuff before cleaning them out. Since I still lived with my parents, they would use the car from time to time if they needed. One day, I noticed a bunch of fishing lines with hooks on them in the back of my car. On one of those rare occasions that I actually cleaned it out, a bunch of hooks were embedded into the upholstery, and more are between the creases on the seat. It takes me a while to get them all out, almost pricking myself several times while doing it. I have no idea how long they were there, as the last time I had cleaned my car out was months ago. At any rate, I'm annoyed. At first, I thought my dad had put them in there, as he had recently used this car to transport a bunch of old junk for a garage sale. But when I asked him about it, he told me that he's never seen any fishing hooks or lines in any of the old stuff of ours, and nobody in my family even fishes, so it wouldn't make any sense for us to have it. He's also the only other person that has used my car in the past year or two. I'm the kind of person who locks everything every night. I triple check my car doors, and if I'm even a little uncertain as to whether or not I locked up, I will go back to my car and check, despite any inconvenience. I also park it where I can see it from my bedroom window and hear if anyone is tampering with it, so I doubt anyone could have broken in, and I just assumed Dad missed it and didn't think any more of it. Until a month later, when I found even more fishing hooks in my back seat. At this point, I asked my dad about it again, but he figured that I was either pulling a weird prank on him, or someone is breaking into my car. I wonder why, though, they would break into my car, not steal anything out of it, and leave fishing hooks inside. It just didn't make any sense to me. To give you an idea about how weird this is, I live in a neighborhood where everyone knows everyone, and even have a private Facebook group that started because of a drug house at the end of the street cropping up, though at this point it was no longer there. The group became sort of a neighborhood watch that always posts whenever something suspicious happens around here. So there isn't any neighbors I don't know for miles, and none of the ones I do know would do something this shady. Again, without any explanation or clear motive, it fades into the back of my mind as the days and weeks pass. I eventually get a new job selling mattresses, as I had been unemployed focusing on school for a while. I move out of my parents' house to go live with my girlfriend, and this is where things turn from weird to extremely unsettling. One night, we decide to go to a nearby store to get something to make food with. When I notice in my back seat, there was a bunch of fishing lines and hooks again. Startled, I looked around for any sign of anyone being nearby. I told my girlfriend to go back into the house, and I sit up and stare at my car from our bedroom window until morning comes. I don't see anyone or anything. That morning, I get ready for work, and my girlfriend gets ready for college courses, and we leave. The store I was working at during this time had this weird L-shaped design to it, with two separate entrances and a cafe taking up the space in between them. There was one entrance that was easily visible from the front desk, and another that you would have to get up and go see. As I was closing up for the night after the last incident, I go to turn off the open signs, and see in the center of the obscured hallway an entire roll of fishing line coiled up, with part of the line leading to the door where a pile of hooks sat. I had no customers that day and didn't hear the alarm going off. I then noticed that someone had turned the door alarms off, but neither I nor my only coworker had ever tampered with that device before, and it was behind the front desk. I was shaking. Someone had been stalking me and leaving these hooks and lines for me to see, but I had no idea what to do. Call the police? Other than the fishing lines and hooks, there was really nothing to trace back to anyone. My store had no security cameras. Corporate would never agree to install them. I figured the best I could do would be to not appear as frightened as I was, in case whoever was doing this was watching and recording me. I thought that if seeing something like this didn't make me go about my day differently, and I wouldn't give whatever reaction this person was looking for, they would just give up and go away. For several more months, I would find fishing lines and hooks in my car, despite it being locked, and my parents, being the only people with extra keys, being much too busy with the construction of their new house and their jobs to take time out of their day to prank me. Once or twice, I would leave notes in my car asking whoever it was why they were doing this, and to please stop. I would find the notes were gone whenever the lines and hooks reappeared, but never got a response. Eventually, after a series of misunderstandings and disagreements with my girlfriend's family, I decided to move out of my girlfriend's house and rented out an apartment with a couple of my friends until my parents' new house could be completed. The very last time I had an encounter with the lines and the hooks, I came home from work to find them strewn about the living room. Stuff had been knocked over, and a few things were broken. However, nothing was taken. My friend, his girlfriend, and their baby were gone at the time, so no one was there when this happened, except for the cats, who were absolutely spooked and wouldn't come out from under the bed for hours. To this day, I still don't know what this person wanted, why they were stalking me in the first place, or what the fishing lines and hooks meant. No one that I know is into fishing at all, and I don't go out of my way to make enemies or cross people. I honestly don't know if this person was someone I knew or a stranger who was very good at covering their tracks. What I know for sure is that I will have anxiety for the rest of my life over this, and I routinely stay up until 4 or 5 in the morning, because in addition to several other traumatizing experiences, this has made every bump in the night a potential threat for me. It's been about 10 years since I've seen anything more from this person, but instead of feeling reassured that it's finally over, I feel more uneasy that someone has followed me through the many changes in my life. Anyways, I hope you enjoy listening. I'm shaking as I type this out. I haven't really talked about it in great detail to anyone, because simply describing it makes me feel like a lunatic. Not only that, but I don't want to worry my friends and family when there's nothing that they can do about it. This will likely be a mystery that will never be solved.
At 13, I used to think my sister Patricia was perfect. She was 17, popular, had a ton of friends, and had this boyfriend Jake, who everyone thought was really cool. I wanted to be like her when I got to high school. Then Jake dumped her. I heard them fighting out in the driveway. He yelled something about some Zoe having a better figure and Patricia letting herself go. She came inside crying so hard she could barely breathe. That night, she ate very little at dinner. When Mom asked if she's feeling okay, she shrugged, saying she just needs to sleep. But around midnight, I could hear her in the washroom, puking. After that, it started happening more often. Patricia would eat dinner with us, but moments later, she'll go up and puke it all out. One time I asked her if she's having any health issues. She strictly warned me to stay out of her life. I told Mom, but she said we should all give Patricia some space. The breakup had upset her, and it takes time when you are young to cope up with a heartbreak. I wish Mom took all this more seriously. One night, I was up late working on this science project I had to finish by morning. Taking a small break, I stepped downstairs to grab a snack when I heard whispers from the basement. The voice sounded like my sister's. The basement door was cracked open. I could see candlelight flickering. I pushed it and looked down the steps. Patricia was kneeling on the concrete with candles all around her in a circle. Her face looked like straight out of a horror movie. She had drawn an upside-down cross on her face with a black marker. There were weird symbols on the wall, drawn in what looked like red paint. A white bowl sat in front of her. She was eating raw meat from it. I could tell because it was shiny and wet in the candlelight, and her hands were covered in blood. "Patricia?" I whispered, horrified. Slowly she turned her head and looked at me. Her eyes were sunken way back in her skull, with these dark circles underneath. Her cheeks were hollow, and she'd gotten so skinny she didn't even look like Patricia anymore. "Matthew," she smiled, flashing the red-stained teeth. "You shouldn't be here." "What are you doing?" "What is that?" "I'm making myself perfect." She looked back at the bowl. "Fixing what's wrong with me." "What? That's raw meat. Have you totally lost it? Raw meat changes your body faster than anything else. I found these people online who only eat this, and their bodies transform in weeks." She picked up another piece and started chewing loudly. Blood dripped down her wrist. I ran back upstairs, shook Mom and Dad awake and told them everything. They went down to the basement, and I heard yelling. They dragged Patricia upstairs. She fought them the whole way, trying to get back down there. Dad had to physically carry her while she clawed at his arms and face. "Let me go! I'm not finished. I have to finish the ritual." They locked her in her bedroom. I could hear her slamming herself against the door, sobbing and begging them to let her complete it. Mom called a crisis hotline. The hotline staff advised us to bring her to the hospital first thing in the morning. I tried going back to sleep, but couldn't. Around 3 a.m., my door flew open so hard it hit the wall. Patricia stood in the doorway. She'd somehow gotten out. The light from my window caught her eyes, and they looked completely insane. "You told them," she hissed. "You ruined everything." "Patricia, listen. You're sick. You need help. I need to be perfect." She lunged at my bed, and that's when I saw the knife in her hand, one of the big ones from Mom's kitchen. "You're trying to stop me from being perfect." I threw myself off the bed just as the knife came down. It ripped through my pillow, through the sheets, and right into the mattress. "Patricia, please stop." She came at me again. I tried to block her, but the blade cut into my forearm. The pain was instant and horrible. I screamed. Blood started pouring out, running down my arm, dripping onto the carpet. "You ruined it!" She was sobbing now, raising the knife again. "They're going to send me away. I'll never finish and be good enough." The door crashed open. Dad tackled Patricia from the side. They both hit the floor hard. The knife skidded under my dresser. Mom was screaming, running to me, and pressed a cloth against my arm. Dad was trying to hold Patricia down, but she kept fighting, scratching and biting. It took 2 paramedics and a police officer to restrain her. They had to sedate her right there on my bedroom floor. Even after the shot kicked in and her body went limp, her lips kept chanting those weird words from the basement. I needed 12 stitches. The scar is thick and raised. It runs from my elbow halfway down to my wrist. Patricia's been in a psychiatric hospital for 2 months now. The doctors told us she had a complete psychotic break. The breakup triggered insecurities, and she spiraled into extreme body dysmorphia. That forum she found was a pro-anorexia site mixed with occult rituals. It was convincing vulnerable girls that starving themselves and performing these ceremonies would make them perfect. She'd been eating nothing but raw chicken and beef for weeks. The doctor said another few days, and the malnutrition or food poisoning would have killed her. Mom cries constantly. Dad barely talks anymore. I visit Patricia sometimes, but she doesn't recognize me. She just stares at the walls and whispers about perfection. Jake's still with Zoe. They post happy couple photos on Instagram like nothing happened. Like his words didn't destroy my sister's entire life. The doctors say Patricia might get better eventually, but she won't be the same person again. I'd struggled with my weight my whole life. So when I saw an ad for Peak Performance Gym promising life-changing transformations in 90 days, I signed up instantly. The gym was small, tucked in a strip mall between a nail salon and a pizza place. Nothing fancy, but it was cheap and close to my apartment. That's where I met Mark, my trainer. He was tall, fit, and had an easy vibe. During our first session, he spent an hour asking about my goals, habits, and schedules. "You're going to do great, Lila," he said, hand on my shoulder. "You showed up, and that's what matters." It felt nice having someone believe in me. The training started normal. Mark pushed me hard, but knew when to back off. He'd text every morning with motivation and meal plan reminders. Then he started checking in during the day, asking how I felt, if I'd eaten enough protein, and if I was drinking water. "You're doing amazing," his texts would say. "I'm so proud of you." After 2 weeks, I'd lost 5 pounds. After a month, 10. I was seeing results, and Mark was always there. But the compliments shifted. Great form became, "You look really good in those leggings." Nice work turned into, "You have no idea how beautiful you are." He also started training me later, when fewer people were around. "We can focus better without distractions," he said. Then, one night, he pulled out a container of pills during our session. "Special supplements," he said. "I don't give these to everyone, but you're ready for the next level. They'll speed up fat loss, boost metabolism. You'll see results twice as fast." I hesitated. "What's in them?" "It's totally herbal and safe. I take them myself," he smiled. "Trust me, Lila. When have I steered you wrong?" I took the bottle home and started taking it the way he'd told me. Mark was a professional. He cared about me. Why would he give me something bad? Within a week, I felt light. A bit jittery at times, but I really felt energized. Then, 2 nights later, I was finishing a late session. It was almost 10 p.m. and the gym was empty except for us. Mark had convinced me to stay late for one final push before your weigh-in tomorrow. "I have something new for you," he said, pulling out a purple sports drink. "Metabolism booster. You drink it before bed, it works while you sleep, burns fat overnight." "Really? But I think I'm doing just fine with those supplements you've—" "Lila." His voice went slightly cold. "Do you want results or not? I'm giving you premium supplements that cost hundreds of dollars for free. The least you can do is trust my expertise." Guilt crashed over me. He'd been so good to me, spent so much time. I was being ungrateful. "Okay, sorry. That's my girl. Drink up." I took the bottle and sipped. It tasted wrong, bitter underneath the fake grape flavor. I drank about half before my head got heavy. "Mark, I feel weird. That's normal. Blood sugar's probably low. Come, sit down. He guided me toward the mats in the back corner, away from the windows and the front desk. My vision was blurry. The lights seemed to pulse. Just lie back and relax, Mark said. His voice sounded far away. We'll do some stretches. This helps the supplement absorb. I tried to sit up, but my arms felt like lead. I think I need to go home. Shh, it's okay. Close your eyes. I've got you. His hand was on my ankle, moving up my calf. The touch felt wrong. Mark, stop! You're so tense. Just relax, Lila. I tried to push his hand away, but could barely move. My body wasn't working. I couldn't even scream. Mark was leaning closer. His hands were all over me. My eyes were nearly closed when suddenly I heard a bang, like someone had kicked a door open. There were heavy footsteps of several people. Don't move! Step away from her now! Everything happened fast. Mark jumped back, hands up. 2 cops rushed over. A woman from the gym was with them with her phone out. I got it all, officer. The drink, everything he said, how he touched her. A female officer knelt next to me. Can you hear me? We're getting help. The ambulance came. They ran tests and found rohypnol in the drink, the date rape drug. The supplements were dangerous stimulants that had been messing up my system for weeks. The woman who saved me was Rachel. She'd been at the gym for 3 months and noticed Mark's pattern. She'd been documenting everything and had followed me that night because she had a bad feeling. I should have said something sooner, Rachel told me at the hospital. I wasn't sure. Didn't want to cause trouble if I was wrong. But when I saw him pull out that drink, "You saved my life," I said. Mark got arrested that night. The investigation found 5 other women he'd assaulted over 2 years. Women who were too ashamed or scared to say anything. Women who thought they were the only ones, that maybe they misread things, that maybe they deserved it. I pressed charges. 3 of the others did too, once they knew they weren't alone. Mark got 12 years. That was 6 months ago. I still go to therapy twice a week. I work out at home now. Had to get a new phone number because I couldn't look at those old texts without feeling sick. Some nights, I still wake up tasting that purple drink, feeling his hand on my body and hearing him mumble, "Trust me." I don't know what the takeaway is supposed to be. Don't trust trainers. Don't try to be the right shape. Be paranoid about everyone. All I know is, some woman paid attention when I didn't. She noticed things I missed because I wanted so badly to believe an illusion. I don't have nightmares about what happened. I have nightmares about what almost happened. And that's worse somehow. At 23, my life was pretty ordinary. I had a decent job, good friends, and Holly, my poodle, who thought I hung the moon. I was around 200 pounds. Some days I felt fine about it, other days not so much. Then my sister got engaged and asked me to be her maid of honor. The wedding was in 6 months, and I wanted to look good in the photos, so I decided to start small. Morning walks with Holly before work. That winter morning was my 3rd try. The first 2 times I gave up after 10 minutes, but this time felt different. The frost made everything look clean. Holly walked next to me, her leash jingling, and for the first time in a while I felt relaxed. We'd been out maybe 20 minutes when I saw some guy near an adjacent alley to the sidewalk. He was crouched by a fire in a metal drum. The flames made his face look strange and waxy. His clothes were torn and filthy, hanging off him like rags. I thought of turning around, but then shrugged it off and told myself I was being paranoid. He was probably some homeless guy trying to stay warm. My next thought was to walk past him before he noticed me. But as I took a couple of steps, he looked up. His mouth stretched into a slow, wide grin. His yellow teeth were illuminated by the firelight. "Morning," he said, voice rough and oddly cheerful. I nodded and tried to walk past quickly, pulling Holly closer. But he stood up and blocked the sidewalk. "That's a nice dog." He stepped toward us. "Real nice. What's its name?" Holly started growling low in her throat, sensing a threat. "We have to go," I said, trying to move around him. He moved with me. Then he reached for Holly. "Let me see her." "No, He grabbed Holly's leash and yanked it out of my hand. Holly yelped and tried to back away, but he pulled her toward him and then toward the fire. "Hey! Stop! What are you doing?" He laughed, this dry, rasping sound. "What a perfect meal. Gonna roast you slow and crispy. Been hungry for days." He picked Holly up by her scruff. She was snarling now, snapping at his hands. Her legs were thrashing wildly. He held her over the flames, and I could see the heat starting to singe her fur. I screamed and rushed at him. Holly twisted and bit down hard on his wrist. He dropped her, screaming in pain. I didn't think. I just kicked him in the shin as hard as I could, scooped Holly up, and ran. "You witch!" His voice echoed behind me. I heard his footsteps, heavy boots pounding the pavement. He was coming after me. "You can't outrun me, girl!" His voice was getting closer. "Look at you!" "You're already slowing down." He was right. My lungs were burning after half a block. My legs felt like they weighed a ton. Holly was shaking in my arms, whimpering. My house was 3 blocks away. I wasn't going to make it. But I kept going anyway. I had to. If I stopped, he'd take Holly and throw her in that fire. I saw a pile of construction gravel on the corner. Without thinking, I grabbed a handful of rocks and hurled them behind me. I heard him curse as one hit. It bought me maybe 5 seconds to catch my breath. 1 block down. My vision was going spotty. My chest felt like it was being crushed. But Holly's heartbeat was pounding against my ribs, and I forced my legs to keep moving. I grabbed more rocks at the next corner, threw them wild, and heard him stumble. "Come back here!" His voice was farther away now, out of breath, too. I was 2 blocks down. Sweat was pouring down my face. My lungs felt like they were on fire. Every breath was a fight. I was nearly sobbing. Then I saw my building. Relief hit me so hard I almost stumbled. My hands shook so badly I almost dropped my keys. But I got the door open, stumbled inside, and slammed it shut. My legs gave out, and I collapsed against it with Holly still in my arms. Through the window, I saw him stop halfway down the block. He stood there for a couple of minutes before he turned and walked away, laughing and skipping like it had all been some sick game. I sat on my floor for an hour holding Holly and crying. Called the cops, but they said without injuries or a better description they couldn't do much. They told me to be careful walking alone. That should have ended it. Should have sent me straight back to hiding in my apartment. But I couldn't stop thinking about it. That guy was right. I was slow. I struggled. But I still outran him when it mattered most. And I realized something that morning. I didn't need to lose weight to look good in wedding photos. I needed to be strong enough to protect myself and those who mattered. So I kept walking. I also joined a kickboxing basics class at the gym near my work. It's brutal. I pant after 5 minutes. Sometimes I get so dizzy I have to sit down. Once, I actually passed out during warm-ups and woke up to the instructor fanning me with a towel. But you know what? I'd rather pass out in a gym surrounded by people than on a street where some psycho can grab my dog or do worse to me. I carry pepper spray too, just in case, and take different routes. I'm learning how to throw a proper punch and how to use my weight as an advantage instead of a weakness. My sister's wedding is in 2 weeks. My transformation ain't miraculous. I probably won't look that different in the photos, but I can run 3 blocks without stopping now. I can throw a decent hook. I can defend myself. And yeah, I still have bad days. Days when I'm exhausted and sore and wondering why I'm putting myself through this. But then I look at Holly, alive and safe, curled up on my couch, and I remember that my body worked when I wanted it to. It saved something I love.
I've been meaning to send my story in for a while now. I think every time I sit down to write it, my hands just hover over the keyboard, and I start questioning if it's even worth telling. But then I remember how I felt that night, that gnawing sensation deep in my gut, the way my skin prickled with adrenaline. And I figured, yeah, this does belong here, so I hope you guys enjoy my story. I've been a fan of Booze and Booze for around a year now, always looking forward to those late night uploads where I could turn the lights off, throw on my headphones, and let the stories wrap around me like a blanket. I never thought I'd have one to share, but this isn't just my story. It's something that happened to me and a coworker back when I was fresh out of high school, working late night shift at a home improvement store, a big one. I'm sure you can guess the name. Between the two of us, I think she got the worst of it. Back then, I was taking my first semester of college classes, scraping together tuition money by working at a regional hardware chain. It wasn't anything glamorous, running a register, handling inventory, mopping up whatever messes customers would leave behind, but it was pretty easy work. I liked most of my coworkers and the pay was decent, and most nights were uneventful. Keyword there being most nights. This one in particular was a pretty slow evening. Everyone was watching the clocks and none of them were moving. We were around an hour from closing. The store had that eerie, half-empty atmosphere that only big retail spaces get after dark. The lights above my head buzzed, casting this sick glow over the aisles, and the air smelled like sawdust and metal. The customers left in the building were the usual stragglers, contractors grabbing last-minute supplies, couples arguing over paint samples, that sort of thing. I was finishing up her return at customer service when she walked up to me. Let's call her Hannah. She was one of the newer hires, maybe a year or two older than me, and usually pretty upbeat. But that night she looked kind of different, tight-lipped, stiff-shouldered. Her eyes darted around like she was expecting something to lunge at her out from the shadows. "Hey," she said, low enough that I could only hear her. "Can you, walk with me for a little bit?" I raised an eyebrow. "What's up?" She swallowed and glanced over her shoulder. "I think I'm being followed." That snapped me to attention. She told me about this man, a big guy, older with a greasy baseball cap and a stare that made her skin crawl. He'd approached her in plumbing, asking her for her help to find a part. Nothing weird at first, but then he just didn't leave. Every time she tried to step away, he found another excuse to keep her there, his questions getting more off topic and more personal. Finally, she made up a reason to leave, and when she checked over her shoulder, he was still there watching her. That was 45 minutes ago. He followed her around the store, and eventually she lost him in power tools, then bolted to the nearest coworker for some kind of assistance. She didn't know where he was at now. I didn't ask any more questions. Hannah was obviously freaked out, and if there was even a chance that some creep was lurking about, I wasn't about to let her wander the store alone. Honestly, this was more exciting than anything work-related anyway, so I prefer to run interference than actually close the store. "Come on," I said, grabbing a clipboard from the counter. Let's look busy." We made our way towards the back aisles, checking inventory, scanning shelves, counting items. Occasionally, my eyes kept flicking up, sweeping the store, but I didn't see anybody out of place. Just a couple of customers near checkout. Donnie in a neon vest was restocking lumber, and one of my other friends was just dicking around on the forklift in the bay. "Are you sure he's still even here?" I whispered. Hannah hesitated. "I don't know, I just feel like he is." For some reason, I just didn't like that answer. We kept moving, aisle by aisle, her sticking close to my side. About 20 minutes later, she seemed to relax a little bit, We hadn't seen the guy at all, and she was starting to think that maybe he did indeed leave. This actually proved to be two birds with one stone because we got a lot of that light inventory work done. And then, that's when I saw him. I was standing near the aisle end cap, watching my buddy do these slow, lazy donuts in the forklift out in lumber, shaking my head at his stupidity. Then I turned back to check on Hannah, only to spot him. He was lurking at the mouth of an aisle, half shielded by the end cap display. It was a big man, mid-50s with a broad chest and slumped shoulders, dressed in these dark jeans and a windbreaker. His baseball cap was pulled really low, but I could see the way he was looking at her. I could also see that this guy was jacked beneath that jacket. Even with the extra layer, his arms were 3 times the size of mine. He stared at Hannah, fixed, unblinking. I could tell his whole body was tense, like he was just waiting for the right moment to do something. This is not good. I forced my face into something neutral and walked back to Hannah, who was maybe 30 feet away, scanning a shelf. I walked right by that weirdo, down the aisle, and put myself between her and the guy, watching from the end of the shelving. I kept my voice casual. "Hey, let's head back to customer service." She frowned at me. "What? Why?" I stepped closer, lowering my voice. "Because he's here, end of the aisle, watching you." Her face paled and I nodded at her, encouraging her that this was pretty serious. "Just walk," I murmured. "Now." She turned stiffly and started moving towards the front of the store, as quick as she could without actually running. I turned back to the aisle, ready for anything. To my relief, he wasn't right on top of me like I was expecting him to be. The man just hadn't moved. I stared him down, gripping my clipboard, fighting the urge to let my hands shake. Then I smiled, the way you do when you're trying to let somebody know that you're not afraid of them. "You need any help finding anything, sir?" His stare didn't even waver. I took a slow step toward him. "We're closing soon, just so you know." His mouth then twitched, somewhere between a grimace and a sneer. I could tell he wanted to say something back to me, but then without a word he turned and walked off, disappearing down the aisle. I stood there for a few seconds, forcing my breath to stay even, pulse pounding in my ears. I felt like a damn gunslinger. I was glad to have helped out a coworker. And then I went to go find Hannah. She was back at customer service, gripping the counter, body rigid. A small crowd of assistant managers had gathered around her. "Is he gone?" I hesitated. "I don't know. I hope so." "Jesus," she muttered, pressing her hands over her face. "That guy's been watching me all night." "Yeah, he's super creepy. He didn't even say a word to me." We waited until the store officially closed, watching the last customers leave, making sure that he wasn't among them. I didn't see him again. Maybe he had in fact left. Maybe I spooked him. Either way, I was just relieved when we locked those doors. But that relief did not last long. An hour later, the store was empty except for a few employees. Most of us were already clocked out, trickling off to our cars. I stepped outside, the night air sharp and cold, the parking lot stretching dark and quiet around me. I glanced over and saw this single car parked at the far edge of the lot. All the employees parked on a small side lot, so whoever was out there was not an employee. I knew before I even got close. I walked slowly, trying to not look too obvious, heading toward my own car, but veering just enough to get a good look. A beat-up old sedan idling low, and inside, the same man. His face was barely visible in the dim glow of the dashboard lights, but he was just sitting there, waiting. A deep instinctual alarm flared up in my brain, every nerve firing off at once. Lizard brain, fight or flight. I turned on my heel and made a beeline back to the store. The security office for the strip mall was a few doors down, tucked in between a shuttered electronics store and a laundromat. I knocked on the glass and peered between the blinds. A guy in uniform answered me, maybe late 40s, heavy set, with a bored expression on his face. "Something wrong?" I jerked my thumb over my shoulder. "Yeah, there's a guy parked in the lot. He was inside our store earlier, acting super weird and following my coworker around. Now he's just sitting there." The security guy frowned at me. He's still there now? Yeah, far into the lot, dark sedan. He grunted. All right, stay put. I stood there as he climbed into his marked SUV and rolled out into the lot, cruising slow towards that sedan. He stopped behind it and threw his lights on. I watched from a distance as he stepped out and approached the driver's side. A tense few seconds then passed, and then the guy in the sedan just fired up his engine. He didn't speed off though. He didn't make this big scene. He just pulled out, circled the lot, and then exited onto the road, slowly. As he passed me, he looked directly at me, eyes locked onto mine, dark and bottomless. And I swear to God, I felt something press against my chest, something heavy, like he was willing me to die right there on the sidewalk, like he was memorizing me for later. Almost like he was telling me that he would see me again. I watched his taillights vanish off into the dark. My pulse was still hammering in my ears. I only realized that I'd been holding my breath when the security guy rolled back up beside me and leaned out his window. Yeah, that guy was definitely off, he said, shaking his head. Kept acting like he had some kind of business here, but wouldn't say what. Just kept asking when people left for the night. A chill then coiled up my spine. What'd you tell him? I told him to take a fucking hike, the guard said. And lucky for you, kid, he did. He eyed me for a second. You drive straight home, keep an eye out, and if you see him again, call somebody immediately. I just nodded, trying to swallow that lump in my throat. Good call bringing it to us, he added. That guy wasn't just loitering, he was definitely waiting. I didn't ask what he meant, but I heard he knew. I hurriedly went back to my car, glancing over my shoulder the whole way, half expecting that old sedan to be idling at the end of the lot again, but it was gone. The entire parking lot was now empty. I locked my doors the second I got inside and just sat there gripping the wheel, forcing myself to catch my breath. Then I pulled out, making sure to check every mirror and every side street. I also took the long way home that night, just in case. For the next few days, I was on edge. Every time I would walk to my car at night, after closing, I half expected to see that sedan parked somewhere in the lot again, headlights off, waiting. We started leaving work in pairs, sticking close to other coworkers. I even told my manager about the whole thing, and he had security do extra sweeps of the property every single night. Thankfully, that guy never came back. Poor Hannah was shaken for a while too. She completely switched up her schedule, so she wouldn't be working nights anymore, which I can't really blame her for. Some nights I wondered if that had been the plan all along, if he'd been waiting for her to leave alone, to see if she got in her car by herself. I never ended up telling her what the security guy said. I didn't want to make her any more scared than she already was. I've actually sent a story into Booze and Booze before. Maybe some of you remember it. It was about my coworker Benji and this weird night shift incident that we had together. It's been a while since I last submitted, but I figure, why not? I'll throw another one your way. And this one's even crazier. I used to work in a call center for a nationwide towing company, the kind of place that stayed open 24/7 to dispatch trucks at all hours of the day and night. The job itself was simple: take calls, input service requests, and then send them out to the right drivers. Since I worked overnights, it was usually dead quiet, which meant I had a lot of downtime. My coworker Benji and I would have the same shifts, and we got along pretty well enough to pass those hours. Our office itself was inside this shared business complex. Nothing special, just a bunch of suites crammed together, totally empty at night. The only thing around that had any life after midnight was the 7-Eleven across the street. That place was a godsend during these long shifts. We'd head over to grab some snacks on break, vape in the parking lot before heading back into the desk. With that being said, it also brought in a little riffraff. Those that remember my last story may recall the details. I went out to use the external bathrooms, and while walking back into the office, I got jumped by a homeless dude that was hanging around one of our dumpsters. Lots of homeless flocked to the 7-Eleven at night, like moths to a flame. That night was like really any other. Calls were pretty slow, office was quiet, and then I'd say around 2 a.m., Benji and I decided to take a break. We lock up and cross the lot and started off towards the gas station. As we were walking, a car whipped into the parking lot really fast, jerking to a stop in front of the store. We both noticed it, but didn't think too much of it. Maybe just some drunk guy making a late night beer run or something. Probably needs a box of condoms, Benji said, laughing. We were halfway across the street when we heard the shouting. At first it was muffled and distant, but then a man's voice cut through the night, barking orders loud and aggressively. The car that had screeched into the lot suddenly tore back off onto the road, disappearing down a side street, tires screaming. And then, through the huge glass windows of the 7-Eleven, we saw a man in a ski mask holding a gun. Benji grabbed my arm. Holy shit. I didn't say anything. I just turned and started walking back toward the office, fast. My pulse was slamming as I kept my eyes on the store. The guy inside was moving in every direction, pointing the gun at the cashier. Then, as if in slow motion, I saw him whip his head toward us, and we weren't alone. Another guy, a second one, also in a mask, came running out of the store. He looked around and then locked eyes with us, and then sprinted straight for us. Benji and I didn't say a word, we just ran. This really felt like something straight out of Grand Theft Auto. We didn't need any logic or instruction. This was real danger. Only one move to be made, and that was just to get the fuck out. We turned around and the two guys outside the 7-Eleven locked on, their footfalls coming up behind us. One of them, the one with the gun, yelled something that I couldn't quite make out, but I don't think I really needed to hear it to understand. This was a chase. Benji was a step ahead of me, already in a full sprint across the parking lot, so I pushed my legs harder, pumping my arms and tried to keep up. Our office was close, just a couple of 100 feet away, but that distance had never felt so damn long until then. Behind us, I heard the first guy's shoe slap against the pavement. He was fast, a lot faster than me. The gunman was trailing behind him, and the other guy, the one who'd been barking orders inside, was gaining ground. I half expected to feel him grab my collar at any second. I risked taking a glance back, and it was a big mistake. The bastard was literally right there, 5 feet away, his ski mask riding up just enough for me to see his mouth twisted up into a snarl. "You're mine," he shouted. Benji reached for the door first, skidding to a stop, hands fumbling for the keypad. Come on, come on. I could hear the beeping as he punched in the code. My feet hit the landing of the building and we were almost there. But then, something slammed into my back, and I went down hard, my chin bouncing off the concrete. My teeth clacked together, pain exploding through my jaw. The weight of the guy was on me in an instant, his hands clawing at my jacket, trying to turn me over. "Fuck!" I gasped out, twisting and kicking out blindly. My shoe connected with something soft, a stomach, maybe his groin, and the guy let out this grunt, loosening his grip just enough for me to roll free. Benji was screaming my name the whole time. "Get the fuck up, dude, get up!" I scrambled to my feet, blood in my mouth, world tilting. The guy then lunged again, grabbing at my sleeve, but I ripped free, hurled myself towards the door. Benji had it open just enough for me to squeeze through, and the second I was inside, he threw his weight against it, trying to slam it shut. But the guy outside was not giving up easily. It was the other guy, the one with the gun, giving it everything he had trying to get inside. A hand then shot through the gap. Thick fingers clawed at the air trying to grab at us. Benji grunted and shoved harder. "Dude, help me!" I threw myself against the door. The guy outside let out this furious roar, pushing back, fingers scraping against my arm the whole time. For a split second, I really thought he was about to win. I thought he was gonna get it open. If that happened, we'd be fucked for sure. But then from outside, I heard, "Move!" A gunshot exploded through the night. That sound was deafening in the enclosed space. I felt the impact of it on my chest like a punch from the inside. The guy outside cursed, jerking back, and we took the chance. Benji slammed the door shut and locked it into place. Silence. I staggered backward. My hands were shaking, adrenaline pouring through me like ice water. Neither of us were hit, thankfully, so we assumed they tried to shoot the door or the building, maybe even just up in the air to scare us. Benji was panting, staring at the door. Dude. Another bang. The guy outside punched the glass full force. Another bang. Again, bang. I could see his silhouette through the narrow windows. His breath was fogging up the glass. His posture was rigid with rage. His friend was standing right beside him, the gunman, and the two of them started circling the building, checking the windows and the other doors. "We gotta go to the back office now," Benji said, grabbing my sleeve. "Go, go." We ran deeper into the office, past empty desks and silent cubicles. The security office was in the back, just big enough for a desk and a few filing cabinets, and one single chair. But the door was solid wood, with a steel sheet inside of it, and it had a deadbolt. We threw ourselves inside and slammed it shut, locking it immediately. Outside, that banging continued. I grabbed my phone with shaking hands and punched in 911. Operator immediately answering.
911, what's your emergency?
"There's two guys trying to break into our office," I said. "One of them has a gun." Benji sat against the wall, gripping his knees, and his chest was heaving. "Are you in a safe location?" the dispatcher asked. It was kind of funny to hear that question. As a roadside assistant operator, that was literally the opening line of our script. "I think so," I said. "We're locked inside a back office." From outside, we heard another boom, and that sound made me jump. "What the fuck?" Benji hissed. I could tell he was getting agitated. I didn't have to wander for very long. I could hear weird faded beeps from outside. The keypad. They shot the damn keypad. "They're trying to get in," I whispered. Benji wiped his face, sweat slick on his forehead. "Shit, man, shit. This is crazy. We're like fish in a barrel. We should have never ran back in here." The dispatcher was still talking to me, but I barely heard any words she said. I was far too busy listening to the sounds of outside, the muffled voices, the hurried footsteps, the gunman cursing underneath his breath. I heard another shot, then nothing. The silence stretched on, and I could hardly take a breath. That's when I heard sirens. Red and blue lights flashed through the windows, painting the walls in frantic colors. Benji let out this breathless laugh, half hysteria, half relief. "Oh shit, man. Holy shit." We stayed locked in that room until the cops banged on the door and announced themselves. That's when we finally stepped out, and I got my first real look at the damage. The front door was a complete mess. Bullet holes in the keypads, cracked spider webbing across the glass. The cops questioned us, and we gave our statements, still shaking, still reeling. The two guys were long gone, disappeared off into the neighborhood, but we knew one thing for sure. They wanted us dead. And if we would have been a second slower, we would have been. The second we stepped out, it really hit me how close we'd actually been to dying. That front door was ruined. The keypad was a mangled mess of metal and shattered plastic. Bullet holes pocked the frame. A thin wisp of dust still curled from where the gunman had tried and failed to blast his way inside. A couple of the officers were already sweeping the area, flashlights cutting off through the dark. Another was waiting for us, notepad in hand. "Fellas okay?" he asked. Benji just barked out a laugh, the full weight of the situation finally washing over him. "Yeah, just fucking fantastic." I barely recognized my own voice when I spoke. Were they caught?" The cop shook his head. "They took off on foot before we arrived. We got units combing the area though, but no sign of them yet." Benji just ran a hand through his hair. Jesus Christ. The next 30 minutes were just a blur of questions and police chatter. We told them everything about the robbery, about the chase, about the fight at the door. An officer took photos of my arm where the guy had clawed at me. Another pointed out a smear of blood on the doorframe, a pavement where I fell. "Damn, they wanted in bad," one of the cops muttered, eyeing those bullet holes. "Yeah, no shit." Our boss, the owner-operator of the call center, showed up just after 3 a.m. He was an older guy, tough but fair. He looked at the damage with that kind of weary sigh that said he was already adding up the cost inside of his head. "Jesus, boys," he said, rubbing a hand over his face. "You okay?" Benji was just staring at the shot-up door, jaw tight. I nodded at him. Yeah. Our boss exhaled. Well, you're done for the night. Go home and get some sleep. You're both on paid leave until this mess is sorted out. We didn't argue. We were far too wrung out, too drained. Benji drove me home and we barely spoke on the way there. But when I shut my apartment door behind me and locked it, that's when I finally let myself breathe a little and realized that my hands were still shaking. Those guys had been out for blood. And if we'd been just a second slower, we would have given it to them.